Hey, what is up, everyone? Today we got a pretty unique story. It's narrated by Frederick Surrey. Get cozy and watch till the end, guys.
In the grim darkness of the far future, where gods wage war across the stars and entire civilizations burn in the fires of endless conflict, there exists a force so potent, so utterly beyond the comprehension of mortal understanding, that even the mightiest warriors of humanity pale in comparison. They are the Golden Sentinels, who stand between the Emperor of mankind and the death of all things. They are the Adeptus Custodes, and their strength is the stuff of legend. Picture, if you will, a being who stands taller than the greatest heroes of myth. Imagine a warrior, clad in gleaming auramite armor, each plate a masterwork that would bankrupt entire star systems to produce. Envision hands that can crush ceramite as easily as you might crumple paper, eyes that can track a bolt round in flight, and a mind so sharp it could outthink 100 scholars working in concert. This is not hyperbole. This is not the exaggeration of frightened witnesses or the propaganda of desperate commanders. This is simply the reality of what a custodian is, what they have always been, and what they will remain until the stars themselves grow cold. The Adeptus Custodes are not merely soldiers. They are not simply elite troops or special forces in the conventional sense. They represent something far more profound, far more fundamental to the very fabric of the Imperium itself. Each one is a work of art, a masterpiece of genetic engineering so advanced that even the Mechanicus, with all their accumulated knowledge from the dark age of technology, cannot fully comprehend the processes that created them. Or where the Space Marines are mass-produced soldiers, forged in batches and organized into chapters numbering 1,000 strong, the Custodians are individually crafted treasures, each one unique, each one irreplaceable, each one worth more to the Imperium than entire worlds. To understand the true strength of the Adeptus Custodes, we must journey back through 10,000 years of history, through ages of war and wonder, through the rise and fall of empires, through the very founding of the Imperium itself. We must examine not just their physical might, though it is considerable beyond measure, but also their mental acuity, their tactical genius, their unwavering loyalty, and the terrible beauty of their weapons and armor. We must understand what it means to be individually designed by the Emperor of mankind himself, to be crafted from infancy with such precision and care that not even the vaunted Primarchs, those godlike sons of the Emperor, were made with such painstaking attention to detail. In this exploration, we will delve deep into the mysteries that surround these golden warriors. We will examine the alchemical processes that transform helpless infants into beings of such power that a single custodian can face down threats that would require entire companies of Space Marines to combat. We will compare them directly to the Adeptus Astartes, those legendary super soldiers who themselves strike fear into the hearts of humanity's enemies. And you will come to understand why even the mightiest chapter masters and greatest heroes of the Space Marines acknowledge the supremacy of the 10,000. But we will walk the blood-soaked battlefields where custodians have proven their worth, from the war in the Webway, where they held back the infinite hordes of chaos itself, to the Siege of Terror, where they stood as the final wall between the Emperor and oblivion. We will meet the legendary warriors who have worn the golden armor, figures like Constantin Valdor, the first Captain General, whose martial prowess was such that even the Primarchs themselves acknowledged his deadliness. A warrior so skilled, he could duel Alfarius to a standstill without even realizing he faced a Primarch. We will learn of Trajan Valoris, the current Captain General, considered by many to be the greatest warrior to hold that title, since Constantin Valdor vanished into history, as a figure whose very name is spoken with such reverence that to mock him would be to invite swift and certain death. But perhaps most importantly, we will understand why the Custodians matter. In a galaxy where billions die every day, where entire civilizations are ground to dust beneath the inexorable march of war, Where hope itself seems like a cruel joke played by uncaring gods, the Adeptus Custodes represent something more. They are living proof that excellence is achievable, that loyalty can endure beyond reason, that duty can be upheld even when all seems lost. They are the golden thread that connects the Emperor's vision from the earliest days of the Unification Wars to the desperate struggles of the 42nd millennium. They are, in the most literal sense, the keepers of humanity's future. So settle in, dear listener, and prepare yourself for a journey through one of Warhammer 40,000's most fascinating and powerful factions. Whether you're a newcomer to this dark and fascinating universe, or a veteran who has spent decades immersed in its lore, there is always something new to discover about the Adeptus Custodes. Their strength is not measured merely in the enemies they have slain, though those number in the millions. It is measured in the millennia of vigilance, in the 10,000 years of unwavering service, in the absolute dedication to a cause that transcends mere survival and reaches towards something approaching the divine. The story of the Custodians is the story of the Imperium itself, distilled down to its purest essence. It is a tale of sacrifice and duty, of power wielded with precision, and of individuals who have given up everything that makes us human in order to preserve humanity itself. And it begins, as all the greatest stories do, at the very beginning, in the laboratories and gene forges of the Emperor himself, where helpless infants are transformed into living weapons of unparalleled might. The creation process, alchemy of demigods. To truly comprehend the strength of a custodian, we must first understand how they are made. This is not a simple process, not something that can be replicated by even the most skilled janitors or the most advanced mechanicus facilities. The creation of a custodian is an art form, a ritual that has remained virtually unchanged since the earliest days of the Unification Wars. And when the Emperor first walked openly among his warriors and personally oversaw the transformation of each and every Golden Guardian. The process begins with selection, and here we encounter our first fundamental difference from the Space Marines. Where the Adeptus Astartes recruit adolescents, young men and women who have already lived a decade or more of life, the Custodians begin with infants. Not just any infants, mind you, but children selected from the noble houses of Terra itself. These are the sons and daughters of humanity's oldest bloodlines, families that can trace their lineage back through the age of strife, through the dark age of technology, perhaps even to old Earth itself, before the long night descended upon humanity. For these noble families, to have a child selected for transformation into a custodian is considered the highest possible honor. Imagine the scene, a grand procession along the avenue of sacrifice, leading to the Ascensor's Gate of the Imperial Palace. Crowds gather, thousands upon thousands of Terra's citizens, to witness as noble families present their newborn children before the representatives of the 10,000. The parents know, with absolute certainty, that they will never see their child again. If the infant is selected, it will disappear into the depths of the Imperial Palace, into laboratories and gene forges hidden from all mortal eyes. If it is not selected, it will be returned to its family. And while this might seem a relief, for these aristocratic bloodlines, it represents a kind of failure, a sign that their lineage was found wanting. Yet the infants who are chosen, those precious few who possess the genetic compatibility necessary for the process ahead, are taken into the secret chambers beneath the palace. Here, in laboratories that have existed since before the Imperium itself, where technology from the dark age of technology mingles with techniques that might predate human civilization entirely, the transformation begins. And it is a transformation unlike anything else in the Imperium, fundamentally different from the creation of a space marine in ways that matter immensely. When the Adeptus Astartes create a new recruit, they take an adolescent human and implant organs into their body. 19 additional organs, each serving a specific function, each carefully cultivated and then surgically installed. It is a brutal process, a kind of controlled butchery, and many recruits do not survive it. Those who do emerge changed, enhanced, superhuman, but still recognizably built upon a human foundation. The organs are foreign objects, added to what was already there, improving and enhancing, but not fundamentally rewriting. The creation of a custodian follows no such path. There are no organ implantations, no surgical procedures in the traditional sense. Instead, the process is one of complete cellular alchemy. Every single cell in the infant's body is rewritten at a molecular level. The child's genetic code is not merely enhanced or improved, it is completely restructured according to a template that exists nowhere else in the galaxy. This is not mass production. This is not a standardized procedure that can be replicated across thousands of subjects. Each custodian is individually designed, and with the bioalchemists examining the infant's unique genetic structure and crafting a transformation process specifically tailored to that child and that child alone. The process takes decades. Not years, decades. From infancy, through what would normally be childhood and adolescence, the future custodian undergoes constant transformation. Their bones are strengthened at a molecular level, becoming denser than ceramite while remaining flexible enough to move with the fluid grace that marks a custodian's movements. Their muscles are rebuilt, fiber by fiber, into something that can generate forces that would tear apart a normal human body. Their nervous system is rewired, creating reaction times that operate on a scale normal humans cannot even comprehend. Their brain is enhanced, as expanding their cognitive capabilities far beyond even the considerable improvements granted to a space marine. And all of this happens while the child is conscious, aware, learning. Because the transformation of a custodian is not just physical, it is mental, psychological, cultural, and spiritual all at once. Even as their bodies are being rebuilt, the young custodians are being educated in ways that would break the minds of normal humans. They learn dozens of languages, not just High and Low Gothic, but tongues that predate the Imperium, languages from humanity's earliest days and from alien civilizations long extinct. They master every weapon that has ever been used in human warfare, and many that have not. They study tactics and strategy, philosophy and art, politics and espionage, history and science. The training regimen of a custodian in training is harsher than anything the Space Marines endure. Where a Space Marine scout might spend months learning to master their enhanced capabilities, a young custodian spends decades perfecting skills that will need to be flawless. They are tested constantly, pushed beyond what should be possible, forced to excel or fail completely. And failure is not an option that allows for a second chance. A custodian who shows weakness, who demonstrates any flaw that might compromise their absolute perfection, is simply eliminated. This is not cruelty for its own sake. It is recognition of a simple truth. The Emperor's life cannot be protected by anything less than perfection. During the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy, the Emperor himself personally oversaw the creation of each custodian. Think about what that means. The master of mankind, a being of such power that he could stand against the chaos gods themselves, a psyker so potent that his merest thought could reshape reality, the greatest janitor and scientist humanity had ever produced, personally dedicated time and attention to the creation of each golden warrior. He would examine the infant, study its genetic structure with senses that perceived things on a quantum level, and then design a transformation process unique to that child. No two custodians were created in exactly the same way. Each was a custom masterpiece, a unique work of art that could never be precisely replicated. Even now, 10,000 years after the Emperor's internment upon the Golden Throne, this process continues. Deep within the Imperial Palace, while in secret laboratories tended by gene wrights who have served the custodians for countless generations, families of bioalchemists and medical savants who have pledged themselves solely to the 10,000 and answer to no other authority in the Imperium, the ancient procedures are maintained. These gene wrights possess secrets that predate even the Mechanicus' treaty with Mars, knowledge that stretches back to before there even was an Imperium. They understand techniques of genetic manipulation that the rest of the Imperium has forgotten or never knew. Without the Emperor's direct oversight, the process has undoubtedly become more difficult, more uncertain. The survival rate, already terrifyingly low during the Great Crusade, when perhaps one in many thousands of candidates might successfully complete the transformation, has likely declined even further. But it continues, because it must continue. The Adeptus Custodes maintain their strength at 10,000 warriors, the same number they reached during the Horus Heresy. Every custodian who falls in battle must be replaced, and so the selection continues, infants are chosen, and the transformation begins anew. The result of this process, when successful, is something that exists in a category all its own. A fully mature custodian stands on average 304 centimeters tall, more than 10 feet of enhanced muscle, bone, and sinew. Some grow even larger, reaching heights of nearly 400 centimeters and weighing 1,700 kilograms, masses of enhanced tissue and reinforced bone that move with a grace that belies their size. But their physical dimensions, impressive as they are, then tell only the smallest part of the story. A custodian's strength is difficult to quantify in terms that make sense to normal human understanding. They can lift objects that weigh as much as small starships. They can punch through ceramite armor with their bare hands, can tear apart space marines in close combat, can wield weapons so heavy that several normal men working together could not even lift them. Their speed matches their strength. They move so quickly that even other enhanced warriors see them as blurs of golden motion. A custodian can dodge laser fire, can parry attacks from multiple opponents simultaneously, can cross distances that would take a normal human minutes to traverse in mere seconds. Their senses have been enhanced to a degree that borders on the supernatural. And a custodian can track individual heartbeats in a crowded room, can identify specific individuals by scent alone across vast distances, can see in total darkness and in spectrums of light that normal eyes cannot perceive. Their sense of touch is so refined that they can detect subtle vibrations through the deck of a starship, feeling the approach of enemies through solid metal. Their proprioception, their awareness of their body in space, is so perfect that they can fight effectively, even when blinded or deafened, relying on other senses and their absolute knowledge of their own capabilities. But perhaps most remarkably, they are essentially immortal. Not truly immortal in the sense of being unable to die. Violence can certainly end a custodian's life, but they do not age in any meaningful sense. Once a custodian reaches full maturity, usually around the age that would be considered 30 for a normal human, their aging process simply stops. Their bodies maintain themselves at peak efficiency indefinitely. There are custodians still serving who were created during the Great Crusade, warriors who have lived for 10,000 years and show no signs of physical deterioration. They possess regenerative capabilities that allow them to heal from injuries that would kill even a space marine. Lost fingers regrow, shattered bones knit themselves back together. Even damage to vital organs can be survived and overcome, though it may take time for even a custodian's remarkable healing to repair such trauma. All of these physical enhancements are built upon a foundation of genetic perfection that makes each custodian inherently superior to even the finest space marine. Where the Astartes are enhanced humans, built upon a normal human template and improved through the addition of organs and genetic modification, the custodians are rebuilt from the ground up. Their very genetic code has been rewritten to a template that may incorporate elements of the Emperor's own genetic structure. They are, in a very real sense, the Emperor's true firstborn, the closest thing to children that the Master of mankind ever created. This fundamental difference in creation explains why custodians possess capabilities that space marines, for all their might, simply cannot match. A space marine is a weapon of war, built for battle, designed to fight and kill the Emperor's enemies. A custodian is something more, a work of art that happens to be the deadliest warrior in the galaxy, and a being that combines physical perfection with mental brilliance and tactical genius, all wrapped in armor that represents the pinnacle of human technology and wielding weapons that even other Imperial forces are forbidden to use. The creation process of a custodian is not merely a manufacturing procedure. It is a sacred ritual, a continuation of techniques that the Emperor himself developed, a transformation so profound and so complete that it creates beings who exist in a category beyond even the Primarchs in some ways. Where the Primarchs were each unique, each imbued with specific aspects of the Emperor's own nature, designed to lead and inspire entire legions, the Custodians were made to be perfect in all things, to lack any weakness that an enemy might exploit, to be individually capable of facing any threat that might emerge from the darkness between the stars. And this is just the beginning. The creation process gives them the raw potential, the physical and mental capabilities that make everything else possible. But a newly created Custodian, though already formidable beyond measure, is not yet the equal of a veteran who has served for centuries or millennia. To understand the true strength of the Adeptus Custodes, we must now examine what they become through endless training, through constant warfare, through the accumulation of centuries or even millennia of experience. We must understand not just what they are born as, but what they become through dedication to their craft and absolute commitment to their purpose. Physical capabilities. Beyond superhuman. Now that we understand how Custodians are created, let us examine in detail what they become. Let us look at specific capabilities, documented feats, and compare their abilities to other warriors in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Because when we speak of a Custodian's strength, we are not engaging in vague generalities or imprecise exaggerations. We are discussing specific, verifiable capabilities that have been demonstrated on battlefields across the galaxy, recorded by witnesses, and documented in the archives of the Imperium. To begin with their most basic physical attribute, let us consider raw strength. A normal human being, even one trained to peak physical condition, can perhaps lift and carry their own body weight without too much difficulty. An exceptionally strong human, or through years of dedicated training and possibly genetic gifts, might be able to lift twice their body weight. A space marine, enhanced through the gifts of the Emperor's gene seed, can casually perform feats that would be impossible for any unenhanced human. They can tear apart metal with their bare hands, can punch through reinforced barriers, can physically dominate any normal human opponent with effortless ease. A Custodian operates on a level beyond even this. When we say that a Custodian possesses the strength to lift ship-sized objects, we are not speaking metaphorically. There are documented instances of Custodians physically moving pieces of spacecraft, lifting components that weighed tens or even hundreds of tons. Their augmented musculature are rebuilt at a cellular level to operate with efficiency that violates what we think of as normal biological limits, can generate forces that seem almost supernatural. The bones that support this musculature have been reinforced to the point where they will not break under the stresses that this strength generates. A Custodian can grip an object with such force that they crush it to powder, can deliver blows that shatter ceramite armor, can physically tear apart enemy warriors with their bare hands. In practical combat terms, this means that a Custodian can wield weapons that would be impossibly heavy for even a space marine. The Guardian Spear, the signature weapon of the Custodes, is so massive that it would take several normal men working together just to lift it. A space marine could perhaps wield such a weapon, but it would require both hands and considerable effort. A Custodian spins these weapons in complex patterns with one hand, using them with such speed and precision that they blur in the air, creating a defensive perimeter that nothing can penetrate. When wielding a sentinel blade and presidium shield, weapons that are themselves enormously heavy, a Custodian can fight with perfect balance and absolute control, the shield becoming not a burden, but an extension of their body, a weapon in its own right that they can use to crush enemies or deflect incoming fire. Their speed matches their strength in ways that seem to violate physics as we understand it. An object that large, that massive, should not be able to move that quickly. And yet, Custodians can cross distances in eye blinks. Gaze can accelerate from standing still, to a full sprint in a fraction of a second, can change direction mid-movement with such precision that they seem to violate conservation of momentum. They appear as blurs of golden motion even to other enhanced warriors. Space Marines, themselves superhumanly fast, see Custodians move and struggle to track them. The Custodians' reaction times operate on a scale measured in milliseconds or less. They can respond to threats before their enemies have even finished initiating their attacks. This speed is not just a matter of running quickly or striking rapidly, though they excel at both. It is also a matter of processing information and making decisions. A Custodian's enhanced brain can analyze tactical situations in the time it would take a normal human to blink. They can assess multiple threats simultaneously, calculate optimal responses, and execute complex combat maneuvers, all while under fire from multiple directions. Their combat awareness is so refined that they maintain perfect knowledge of everything happening within their immediate vicinity, tracking dozens or even hundreds of separate threats while engaged in brutal close combat. Perhaps even more impressive than their strength or speed are their senses. A Custodian perceives the world in ways that normal humans literally cannot comprehend. Their vision extends far beyond normal human ranges. They can see in complete darkness, can track individual objects moving at tremendous speeds, can identify threats at distances measured in kilometers. They can see in electromagnetic spectrums that normal eyes cannot detect, and allowing them to spot enemies using camouflage or stealth systems. Their hearing is so acute that they can identify specific individuals by the sound of their heartbeat, can detect movement through solid walls, can communicate in whispers across battlefields, and still be perfectly understood by their fellow Custodians. Their sense of smell borders on the supernatural. A Custodian can track a specific individual by scent across a sprawling hive city, can identify different chemical compounds in the air, can detect biological changes that indicate fear or deception in those around them. In one documented instance, a Custodian identified a chaos infiltrator by detecting the subtle corruption in their scent, a taint so slight that even advanced scanning equipment had missed it. Their sense of touch is similarly enhanced, allowing them to detect minute vibrations, to feel changes in air pressure that indicate approaching threats, to maintain perfect awareness of their environment even when their other senses are compromised. All of these enhanced senses feed into a brain that has been rebuilt to process information at superhuman speeds. A Custodian does not merely react to threats, they anticipate them. They can engage in something called a martial trance, a state of consciousness where their already incredible combat abilities are exponentially enhanced. In this state, a Custodian's hyper-advanced brain is fully unlocked, their reaction times becoming so fast that they border on precognition. They do not predict their enemies' actions through psychic means. The Custodians are not psychers and possess no warp-based abilities, but through pure analytical capability, combined with combat experience and enhanced processing speed. They see the minute shifts in an enemy's stance that indicate an incoming attack. They calculate trajectories and optimal responses faster than any cogitator. They fight with a perfection that seems almost unnatural, even by the standards of enhanced warriors. The durability of a Custodian matches their other capabilities. Their bones are denser than the ceramite used in Space Marine armor, yet remain flexible enough to move with perfect fluidity. Their organs are redundant and reinforced, protected by layers of enhanced tissue and armored ribs. They can survive wounds that would kill even a Space Marine instantly. There are documented instances of Custodians fighting with half their face missing, with portions of their skull removed, or with injuries so severe that normal humans would have died from shock alone. They continue fighting until they are physically incapable of movement, until their bodies are so damaged that even their remarkable healing can no longer maintain function. And yet, if they survive, they will heal. The regenerative capabilities of a Custodian are truly remarkable. Minor wounds close within minutes. More serious injuries, broken bones, damaged organs, torn muscles, heal over the course of days or weeks. Even catastrophic damage can be overcome given sufficient time. During the war in the Webway, there are records of custodians who fought for weeks on end with debilitating injuries, wounds that would have killed regular humans several times over, and yet they continued to fight effectively, as their bodies regenerating damage even as they sustained new injuries. This regenerative capability is linked to their biological immortality. Once a custodian reaches full maturity, they simply stop aging in any meaningful sense. Their cells do not deteriorate. Their tissue does not break down. Barring violence, a custodian could theoretically live forever, and indeed many have lived for 10,000 years since the Horus Heresy, with no signs of degradation. They require no sleep in the traditional sense, can go weeks without rest if necessary, can fight continuously for periods that would break the minds of normal warriors. Their bodies are self-maintaining biological machines of war, operating at peak efficiency indefinitely. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of a custodian's physical capabilities is how all of these abilities work together. They are not just strong, or fast, or durable, or possessed of enhanced senses. They are all of these things simultaneously, and each capability enhances the others in ways that create a sum greater than its parts. Their strength allows them to wield weapons with perfect control. Their speed allows them to strike before enemies can defend. Their senses allow them to identify threats before they manifest. Their durability allows them to survive long enough to deploy all their other capabilities. Their regeneration allows them to continue fighting when other warriors would have fallen. To put this in perspective, consider what it means in practical combat terms. A single custodian, as deployed against a force of normal human soldiers, is essentially invincible. They can massacre thousands of guardsmen without sustaining meaningful injury. Laser guns spark harmlessly off their armor. Autoguns might as well be throwing rocks. Even heavy weapons struggle to damage them through both their armor and their natural durability. They move through enemy ranks like a golden storm, each swing of their weapon killing dozens, each step crushing those foolish enough to stand in their path. Against more formidable enemies, the custodian's capabilities truly shine. Fighting against greenskin forces, warriors who match or exceed Space Marines in size and strength, custodians demonstrate clear superiority. There are accounts of individual custodians standing against massive greenskin war bosses, the largest and most powerful of their kind, and emerging victorious against Chaos Space Marines, traitors who possess all the enhancements of loyal Astartes, plus the dark gifts of the ruinous powers. Custodians fight with contemptuous ease. Where it might take a squad of Space Marines to bring down a Chaos champion, a single custodian can accomplish the same task. There is a quote that encapsulates this perfectly, though its origins are somewhat disputed in the lore. One custodian is said to be worth 20 Space Marines in combat effectiveness. Some accounts suggest this ratio is even higher, that a single custodian could face down 50 or even 100 enhanced warriors and emerge victorious. The Emperor himself is said to have stated that he would rather watch 1,000 Space Marines die than lose a single custodian, was a testament to both their incredible value and their terrible effectiveness. This physical superiority extends to their stamina as well. Custodians can fight for weeks on end without meaningful rest. Towards the end of the war in the Webway, which we will discuss in detail later, the custodians had been engaged in constant combat for weeks, facing wave after wave of demonic entities and corrupted Space Marines. They fought without sleep, with barely any rest at all, their bodies sustained by their enhanced biology and their absolute dedication to their duty. They continued fighting effectively, even when reduced to a mere fraction of their original strength, when 90% of their forces had been destroyed, when they were wounded and exhausted and facing enemies without number. And they held the line. As to understand what this means, imagine fighting for weeks without rest. Not training, not mock combat, but actual brutal warfare against enemies who want to kill you, in conditions that would drive normal humans insane. Imagine sustaining injuries that would incapacitate lesser warriors and continuing to fight with undiminished skill. Imagine watching your battle brothers fall around you, knowing that you are among the last defenders, standing between the demonic hordes and the Emperor himself, and yet never wavering, never faltering, never even considering the possibility of retreat. This is what it means to be a custodian. Their physical capabilities are matched by their mental ones in ways that create a truly terrifying opponent. A custodian is not merely a brute, a mindless killing machine that relies solely on physical strength. They are tactical geniuses, strategists who can analyze battlefield conditions and devise optimal responses faster than most commanders can even assess the situation. They are trained in espionage and infiltration, capable of moving unseen through even heavily guarded facilities. They are masters of politics and diplomacy, able to navigate the treacherous waters of imperial politics with the same skill they bring to the battlefield. And they are artists. Yes, artists. The custodians are trained to appreciate and create art, to understand beauty and culture, to engage with the finer aspects of human civilization. This might seem strange for warriors of their caliber, but it serves a purpose. It reminds them what they fight for. It connects them to the humanity they protect. It ensures that they are not mere weapons, but thinking, and feeling beings who choose to fight rather than being compelled to do so.
You know, I've been covering Warhammer lore for quite a while, and the Custodians always fascinated me in a way that's hard to explain. When I first learned about them, I honestly thought they were just golden space marines. Maybe a bit stronger, but nothing too crazy. But the more I dug into their lore, the more I realized how fundamentally different they are. These aren't just upgraded soldiers, they're something else entirely. And what really gets me is the tragedy of it all. Imagine being created as this perfect being, essentially immortal, capable of incredible things, and your entire existence is just standing guard for 10,000 years. Most of them never even leave Terra. That's dedication on a level I can barely comprehend. And it makes me appreciate why Games Workshop treats them as this almost mythical force rather than just another army. But anyways, let's continue the video.
A custodian might spend decades mastering a particular form of sculpture or music, might compose poetry or create paintings, might engage in philosophical discourse on the nature of duty and loyalty. They are Renaissance warriors in the truest sense, masters of both war and peace, violence and beauty. All of this, everything we have discussed, represents the baseline capabilities of a custodian. This is what they are, what they can do, before we even begin to discuss their armor and weapons, before we talk about the additional enhancements those provide. A custodian stripped of all equipment, wearing nothing, carrying no weapons, is still one of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. They can kill with their bare hands, and can fight and survive in environments that would kill even space marines, can operate independently for extended periods without support or resupply. But of course, custodians are never deployed without their armor and weapons. And when we discuss those, when we examine the panoply of war that each custodian carries into battle, we must understand that we are talking about equipment that represents the absolute pinnacle of Imperial technology, weapons and armor that make even the finest war gear of the Space Marines seem crude by comparison. This is what we will examine next, the arms and armor of the Custodies, the tools they use to transform their already incredible capabilities into something that borders on the divine. Custodies versus Space Marines, a detailed comparison. To truly appreciate the strength of the Adeptus Custodies, while we must directly compare them to the warriors that most of the Imperium recognizes as its greatest defenders, the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines. This comparison is not meant to diminish the Space Marines in any way. They are remarkable warriors, enhanced far beyond normal human limitations, heroes who have defended humanity against impossible odds for 10,000 years. But the Custodians exist in a different category entirely, and understanding the differences between these two types of enhanced warriors helps us comprehend just how powerful the Golden Guardians truly are. Let us begin with the most fundamental difference, the process by which they are created. As we discussed earlier, Space Marines are made through a procedure of organ implantation. A young recruit, usually an adolescent between the ages of 10 and 14, This undergoes a series of surgical procedures where 19 additional organs are implanted into their body. These organs, each serving a specific function, transform the recruit into something superhuman. A secondary heart provides redundancy and enhanced cardiovascular performance. An osmodula reinforces their skeleton. A biscopea drastically increases muscle mass and strength. The Larraman's organ provides enhanced blood clotting. And so on, 19 organs total, each one carefully cultured from gene seed extracted from the chapter's genetic stock, which itself traces back to one of the original 20 primarchs. This is, when you think about it, a kind of controlled butchery. The organs are foreign objects being inserted into a body that was not designed to contain them. The recipient's biology must adapt to these additions, must integrate them into existing systems, must somehow make room for new organs while still maintaining all the functions necessary for life. Many recruits do not survive the process. Even those who do often experience complications, failures of integration, organs that do not quite work as intended. The result is impressive, yes, but it is also inherently unstable, which is why Space Marines require constant monitoring, regular intake of their chapter's gene seed through consumption of fallen battle brothers, and why they are ultimately less individually perfect than their creators intended. The Custodian creation process, by contrast, involves no organ implantation whatsoever. There is no brutal surgery, no foreign objects being forced into unwilling flesh. Instead, as we discussed, the transformation happens at a cellular level, and every single cell in the infant's body is rewritten, rebuilt, according to a genetic template that was designed specifically for that individual. The organs a Custodian possesses are not additions, but integral parts of their being, grown from their own cells, according to a plan that was tailored to their unique genetic structure. Where a Space Marine is enhanced, a Custodian is rebuilt. Where a Space Marine receives upgrades to an existing template, a Custodian is created according to a completely new template. This fundamental difference in creation manifests in observable differences in capability. The average Custodian stands at 304 centimeters tall and weighs 730 kilograms. This makes them noticeably larger than the average Space Marine, who stands somewhere between 230 and 250 centimeters and weighs around 300 kilograms in armor. Some particularly large Custodians can reach heights of nearly 400 centimeters and weights approaching 1,700 kilograms, making them truly massive, even compared to the largest Space Marines. But size alone does not tell the full story. A Custodian's enhanced musculature is more efficient than a Space Marine's. They generate more force per kilogram of muscle mass. Their bones are denser and stronger, their nervous system more refined, their senses more acute. Where a Space Marine might have strength rated at, shall we say, 5 on some arbitrary scale compared to a normal human's one, a Custodian operates at 7 or 8. The difference might seem small when expressed numerically, but in practical terms, it means that a Custodian can overpower a Space Marine in a contest of pure strength as easily as a Space Marine can overpower a normal human. Speed tells a similar story. Space Marines are fast, certainly, faster than any unenhanced human could hope to be. They can run at speeds approaching what a normal human might achieve in a vehicle. They can react to threats with superhuman quickness. But Custodians are faster still. To a Space Marine, a Custodian in combat appears as a blur of golden motion. They move so quickly that even enhanced Astartes' reaction times struggle to track them. Where a Space Marine might need a fraction of a second to respond to a threat, a Custodian responds in a small fraction of that fraction, operating on a timescale that makes even superhumans seem slow. The mental differences are perhaps even more significant than the physical ones. Both Custodians and Space Marines receive extensive training, years or even decades of instruction in warfare, tactics, weapons handling, and related disciplines. But the Custodian training process is simply more comprehensive. Where a Space Marine scout might train for a few years before joining a full Battle Brother company, a Custodian trains for decades before being considered ready for combat. Where a Space Marine masters the weapons and tactics relevant to their chapter's fighting style, a Custodian masters every weapon, every tactic, every form of warfare that humanity has ever developed. Space Marines are trained to think tactically, to work as part of a squad, to follow orders and execute plans developed by their commanders. They excel at combined arms warfare, at coordinated assaults where each warrior plays a specific role in a larger plan. Custodians, by contrast, are trained to think strategically. Each one is expected to be capable of independent command, able to analyze a situation and devise an optimal response without requiring direction from superiors. They are trained in politics, diplomacy, espionage, and infiltration, skills that most Space Marines never develop. A Custodian can move through Imperial society at the highest levels, can interact with planetary governors and inquisitors, and even the High Lords of Terror themselves as an equal. This difference in training philosophy stems from a fundamental difference in purpose. Space Marines were created to be soldiers, our warriors who would serve as the Emperor's armies during the Great Crusade, conquering worlds and bringing lost human civilizations back into the Imperial fold. They were always meant to be numerous, to operate in large units, to be replaceable. Chapters maintain a strength of roughly 1,000 warriors because that is a sustainable number. Losses can be replaced through recruitment and training. The chapter can continue operating indefinitely. Custodians were created to be bodyguards, protectors of the Emperor himself, and guardians of his most important secrets. They were never meant to operate in large formations or to be deployed as conventional military units. Each Custodian is an individual lord of the Imperium in their own right, possessing authority that surpasses even Space Marine chapter masters. Well, they answer to no one but the Emperor and their own Captain General. Even the High Lords of Terror can only request their assistance, never command it. This independence requires that each Custodian be capable of operating alone if necessary, and so their training emphasizes individual excellence rather than unit cohesion. This is not to say that Custodians cannot work together, or that they lack any form of tactical coordination. They can and do operate as cohesive units when the situation demands it, and their coordination in battle is flawless. But their fundamental tactical philosophy differs from that of the Space Marines. Where Astartes fight as a pack, as wolves using coordination and numbers to bring down larger prey, Custodians fight as individual champions, tigers of such power that they can face any threat alone. Yes, this difference was memorably described by one Space Marine who observed both forces in action. The Custodians are to the Astartes as tigers are to wolves. Combat effectiveness comparisons help illustrate this difference. A standard tactical squad of Space Marines, 10 warriors led by a sergeant, represents a formidable fighting force capable of defeating nearly any conventional enemy. They can clear buildings, hold defensive positions, assault enemy strongpoints, and perform the myriad other tasks that military forces are required to accomplish. Against normal human forces, a single tactical squad might face down hundreds or even thousands of enemies and emerge victorious. A single Custodian can accomplish similar feats alone. There are documented instances of individual Custodians facing down entire enemy formations and destroying them without assistance. During one engagement, a Custodian confronted a force of Black Templars, loyalist Space Marines, who had been drawn into conflict through a series of unfortunate misunderstandings. The Custodian killed so many of them, inflicting such devastating casualties on their crusade force, that the entire formation was effectively crippled. One warrior, standing alone against a force that numbered in the hundreds or potentially thousands, created such carnage that the Black Templars were forced to withdraw and rebuild. This should not be taken to mean that Custodians are simply 10 times as effective as Space Marines, though many scholars and military theorists have attempted to calculate such ratios. The Emperor himself is said to have stated that he would rather watch 1,000 Space Marines die than lose a single Custodian. This famous quote, if authentic, suggests that the Emperor valued each custodian as being worth roughly an entire chapter's worth of Space Marines. Whether this is accurate or represents the Emperor's personal bias toward his personally created guardians is difficult to say, but it indicates the tremendous individual value of each custodian. Some analyses suggest more conservative ratios. One commonly cited figure suggests that one custodian equals roughly 20 Space Marines in combat effectiveness, though this likely varies tremendously based on circumstances. Against certain types of enemies, the custodian's advantages might be more or less pronounced. In situations requiring tactical flexibility, our strategic thinking, or individual initiative, a custodian's superior training and mental capabilities might give them an even greater edge. In scenarios requiring massed firepower or overwhelming numbers, the advantage might be less pronounced. Direct combat between custodians and Space Marines is rare, as both serve the Emperor and should theoretically never come into conflict. But there are a few documented instances, and they are instructive. During the Horus Heresy, there were occasions when confused loyalties or deliberate treachery led to custodians facing Astartes in battle. In virtually every recorded instance, the custodians prevailed. Space Marines, even veteran warriors from legions renowned for their prowess in close combat, found themselves outmatched by the Golden Guardians. The custodians were faster, stronger, more skilled, better equipped, and fought with an individual excellence that even the finest Space Marines struggled to match. There is an interesting detail in the lore about how custodians view Space Marines. There is respect there, certainly. The custodians recognize that the Astartes serve a crucial function in the Imperium's defense, that they have sacrificed much and fought bravely for 10,000 years. But there is also a certain wariness, even a degree of condescension. The custodians remember the Horus Heresy, when half the Space Marine legions turned traitor and plunged the Imperium into civil war. They know that the Astartes, for all their enhancements and their indoctrination, remain vulnerable to corruption, to pride, to the temptations of chaos. The custodians, by contrast, have never faltered in their loyalty. Not one custodian has ever turned traitor in 10,000 years of service. Not one has been corrupted by chaos, has broken their oaths, has betrayed the Emperor. This perfect record is not merely the result of better indoctrination or stronger mental conditioning. It stems from the very nature of their creation. Each custodian was individually crafted, personally overseen by the Emperor, instilled with loyalty at a genetic level. They cannot be corrupted because they are, in a very real sense, extensions of the Emperor's own will. From the Space Marines' perspective, the custodians are regarded with a mixture of awe and slight frustration. Astartes respect the custodians as the ultimate warriors, recognize that they represent the pinnacle of the Emperor's genetic engineering. Chapter masters and senior officers who have encountered custodians speak of them with reverence. But there is also frustration, particularly among younger or more proud Space Marines, at the custodians' superiority. It can be difficult for an Astartes, who has spent their entire existence since recruitment being told they are humanity's finest defenders, to acknowledge that there exists a class of warriors who surpass them so comprehensively. The relationship between the two forces has varied over the 10,000 years since the heresy. For most of this time, the custodians remained on Terra, guarding the Imperial Palace and the Emperor's physical form, while the Space Marines carried the burden of defending the Imperium's borders. Contact between the two was minimal, limited to rare occasions when custodians left Terra for specific missions. This separation helped prevent tension, as the two forces rarely needed to operate in close proximity. With the return of Robert Guilliman and the dawning of the Indomitus Crusade, this has changed. The custodians have begun deploying beyond Terra more frequently, taking a more active role in the Imperium's defense. This has led to situations where custodians and Space Marines fight alongside each other, and these joint operations have generally been successful. The two forces, despite their differences, share a common purpose and a common enemy. They can work together effectively when the situation demands it. but the fundamental differences remain. A Space Marine is a mass-produced soldier, created through a standardized process that can be replicated across thousands or tens of thousands of subjects. Their war gear is manufactured in bulk, their armor and weapons produced according to established patterns. They are organized into chapters and companies, fight according to doctrinally established tactics, and answer to a clear chain of command that extends from the newest scout all the way up to the chapter master and beyond. A custodian is a unique individual, created through a bespoke process that cannot be truly replicated, only approximately recreated for each new warrior. Their equipment is individually crafted, each suit of armor a masterwork created specifically for its wearer, each weapon a custom piece that might be centuries or millennia old. They operate with near total independence,
answerable only to the Emperor and the Captain General. Each one is a lord of the Imperium in their own right, possessing authority that transcends normal military hierarchy. Perhaps the most telling difference is this. If a Space Marine chapter were to be destroyed, were every single battle brother to fall in combat, the Imperium would mourn, but would ultimately survive. New chapters can be founded, gene seed can be cultivated, warriors can be recruited and trained. Within a few decades or perhaps a century, the chapter could be rebuilt, its losses made good, its strength restored. If the Adeptus Custodes were to be destroyed, if the 10,000 were to fall, it would represent a catastrophe from which the Imperium might never recover. Each custodian represents decades of training, ancient knowledge passed down through generations, is irreplaceable skill and experience. The secrets of their creation are held by only a handful of gene rights, knowledge so precious and so carefully guarded that its loss could mean the end of the custodians as an order. More than that, the symbolic value of the custodians, as the living embodiment of the Emperor's will and the final guardians of his physical form, is incalculable. Their destruction would shake the foundations of imperial faith and might inspire despair across the entire galaxy. This is why the custodians are, and must be, individually superior to even the finest Space Marines. They cannot afford to be merely equal, cannot rely on numbers or tactics alone. Each one must be capable of facing and defeating any threat, must be able to operate independently if necessary, must be a bastion in their own right. But the Emperor created them to be his companions, his bodyguards, the keepers of his secrets. They must be perfect, or they are worthless. And they are perfect. In every measurable way, in combat effectiveness and strategic thinking and tactical flexibility and mental acuity and physical capabilities, the custodians surpass the Space Marines. This is not a failing of the Astartes, who remain among the finest warriors in the galaxy. It is simply recognition that the custodians exist in a category beyond even these remarkable soldiers, that they represent the absolute pinnacle of what genetic engineering and training can achieve, that they are the finest warriors humanity has ever created, and likely ever will create. With this understanding of how custodians compare to Space Marines, we can better appreciate their combat capabilities and the specific skills and training that make them so devastating in battle. Let us now examine their training regimen, their mental capabilities, and the specific combat techniques that transform their raw physical abilities into precision instruments of war. Training, skills, and mental prowess. The physical capabilities of a custodian, impressive as they are, represent only the foundation of their strength. What truly elevates them above all other warriors is the training they receive, training that begins in infancy and continues throughout their entire existence. A custodian never stops learning, never stops refining their skills, never stops pushing the boundaries of what is possible. To understand this, but we must examine the specifics of their training regimen and the skills they develop over decades or centuries of dedicated practice. The training of a custodian begins the moment they are selected for transformation. Even as their bodies are being rebuilt at a cellular level, Even as the bioalchemical processes reshape their genetics, they are being educated. The young custodians, children who have not yet reached what we would consider adolescence, are exposed to knowledge that would overwhelm normal minds. They learn languages, dozens of them, everything from High and Low Gothic to tongues that have not been spoken in millennia, languages from humanity's earliest days before the fall, and even some alien languages, the better to understand potential threats. They study history. It's not the simplified propaganda histories that most imperial citizens learn, but the true history of humanity, stretching back tens of thousands of years. They learn about the golden age of technology and its eventual collapse into the age of strife. They study the Emperor's unification wars on Terra, the Great Crusade that followed, and the Horus heresy that nearly destroyed everything the Emperor had built. They learn the truth about the Primarchs, about the nature of chaos, about threats that the wider Imperium is simply not trusted to know about. They master warfare in all its forms. Every weapon that has ever been used by human forces, from the simple knife to complex plasma weapons and gravity manipulators, they learn to wield with expert proficiency. They study tactics and strategy, learning not just the standard doctrines used by Imperial Guard commanders, but also more esoteric approaches, the tactics of alien races, the stratagems of heretics and traitors, everything that might possibly be useful in combat. They learn to think like their enemies, to anticipate their strategies, to exploit their weaknesses. But their education extends far beyond mere military training. Custodians are trained in politics and diplomacy, learning to navigate the treacherous waters of imperial bureaucracy and noble intrigue. They understand the complex web of alliances and enmities that bind the Imperium together, know which factions can be trusted and which must be watched carefully. They can move through the highest levels of imperial society as easily as they move through a battlefield, or can converse with planetary governors and inquisitors and high lords as equals or even superiors. They learn espionage and infiltration, developing skills that would make them formidable agents of the Inquisition if they ever deign to serve such a role. A custodian can move unseen through even heavily guarded facilities, can adopt disguises and personas, can extract information through subtle questioning or more direct methods. They are trained in assassination, in the creation and deployment of poisons, in dozens of ways to kill a target without detection. These are not skills that custodians use frequently. Their usual method of warfare is rather more direct and overwhelming, but they possess these capabilities nonetheless. Perhaps most surprisingly to those unfamiliar with the custodians, they are trained in art and culture. They learn music and sculpture, poetry and painting, philosophy and mathematics. They study the great works of human civilization, can discuss literature and architecture, can appreciate beauty in all its forms. This might seem incongruous, these warriors of terrible might spending time composing symphonies or crafting sculptures, but it serves an important purpose. The Emperor intended his custodians to be more than mere weapons. They were to be his companions, able to converse with him on any subject, to appreciate the civilization they were defending. They needed to understand what humanity was capable of achieving, what made human civilization worth preserving. By training them in arts and culture, by ensuring they understood beauty as well as violence, the Emperor ensured that his guardians would never become mindless killers, but would always remember the purpose behind their duties. This comprehensive education creates warriors of remarkable intelligence and versatility. The Adeptus Custodes possess intellects enhanced far beyond those of even the Space Marines, combined with millennia of accumulated knowledge, combat training, and experience. They master virtually every field of warfare and human study. A custodian can analyze a tactical situation and devise an optimal response faster than most human commanders can even assess what is happening. They can solve complex strategic problems, can think several moves ahead of their opponents, can adapt to changing circumstances with fluid ease. Their training never truly ends. Even veteran custodians who have served for centuries or millennia continue to refine their skills, continue to study and learn. They participate in exercises called blood games, ritualized competitions where custodians attempt to infiltrate the imperial palace and reach the emperor's throne room, while other custodians attempt to stop them. These games serve multiple purposes. They test the palace's defenses, identifying weaknesses that might be exploited by actual enemies. They keep the custodians sharp, forcing them to think creatively and to constantly innovate new tactics. And they ensure that the custodians never become complacent, never assume that their defenses are adequate. The blood games are taken extremely seriously. A custodian who succeeds in reaching the throne room through cunning and skill earns tremendous honor. Those who fail, who are caught by their brother custodians, learn valuable lessons about security and tactics. The games can involve anything from subtle infiltration using disguises and forged credentials to direct assault using overwhelming force, from poisoning to sabotage to social engineering. They test every skill a custodian possesses and force them to think beyond conventional tactics. Trajan Valoris, the current Captain General, distinguished himself by successfully completing not one, but 2 blood games within his first decade of service, a record that remains unbroken. This achievement marked him as exceptional, even among the custodians, and likely contributed to his eventual elevation to the position of Captain General. It demonstrated not just his combat prowess, but also his tactical genius, his ability to think unconventionally, and his mastery of skills beyond mere warfare. Another aspect of custodian training involves something called the martial trance. This is a state of consciousness that allows a custodian to unlock the full potential of their enhanced brain, to operate at a level of cognitive ability that approaches precognition. In this state, a custodian's combat abilities are exponentially boosted. They can predict their enemy's actions through pure analytical capability, seeing the minute shifts in stance and position that indicate an incoming attack, calculating optimal responses faster than conscious thought. Achieving martial trance requires tremendous skill and experience. It is not something that can be taught directly, but rather a capability that develops through centuries of combat and meditation. A custodian in martial trance appears to move before their enemy's attack, to strike at vulnerable points that have not yet presented themselves, to fight with a perfection that seems supernatural. They are not reading the future through psychic means. The custodians are not and have never been psychers, but rather through such refined combat awareness and analytical capability that they might as well be precognitive. The mental resilience of custodians is as impressive as their physical durability. They are trained to resist interrogation, to withstand torture that would break normal minds. They can maintain perfect mental clarity even under extreme duress, can make rational decisions while enduring pain that would render most warriors unconscious. They are essentially immune to intimidation, fear, being an emotion they have been trained to recognize and dismiss. When facing enemies that use psychological warfare, that attempt to inspire terror through their appearance or their reputation, custodians remain utterly unmoved. This mental fortitude extends to their resistance against psychic attacks and the corrupting influence of chaos. While custodians are not blank or nulls, they possess no inherent resistance to psychic phenomena. Their absolute loyalty and their mental training make them extraordinarily difficult to corrupt or influence. A psyker attempting to dominate a custodian's mind would find it like trying to bend adamantium with their bare hands. Theoretically possible, but practically impossible. The custodian's mental discipline and their genetic encoding with loyalty to the emperor create a fortress that psychic assault struggles to breach against the temptations of chaos. And custodians have proven absolutely incorruptible. In 10,000 years of service, not a single custodian has ever turned traitor, has ever been corrupted by the ruinous powers, has ever broken their oaths to the emperor. This perfect record is not merely the result of good fortune or careful screening. It stems from the fundamental nature of their creation. They were built, at a genetic level, to serve the emperor and only the emperor. The very idea of betrayal is alien to them, not because they lack the mental capacity to conceive of it, but because it violates something core to their being. This has practical implications for combat. When facing demonic entities, beings of pure chaos that can corrupt or dominate lesser warriors, custodians fight with absolute confidence. They are not afraid of corruption. Do not waste mental energy maintaining mental barriers against demonic influence. They can look upon the most horrific manifestations of the warp and remain unmoved, can hear the whispers of demons promising power and glory, and dismiss them without consideration. This makes them ideal warriors for combating chaos forces, able to engage enemies that would break the minds of lesser warriors. Their tactical acumen deserves special mention. Every custodian is trained to think strategically, to command if necessary, to analyze situations and devise optimal responses. This is a marked difference from Space Marines, where strategic thinking is the province of officers and veterans. Among the custodians, the newest recruit is expected to be capable of independent command from the moment they complete their training. They must be able to analyze a battlefield, identify objectives, allocate resources, and lead other warriors to victory. This emphasis on individual tactical capability stems from their role as the Emperor's bodyguards. When deployed in small numbers, often just a handful of custodians or even a single warrior operating alone, they cannot rely on orders from superior officers. They must be able to assess the situation themselves and take appropriate action. A custodian defending a critical objective must be able to read the flow of battle, to anticipate enemy movements, to position themselves optimally, all without requiring guidance from commanders. The training also emphasizes versatility and adaptation. Custodians learn to fight in every conceivable environment, from the void of space to the depths of oceans, both from scorching deserts to frozen tundras, from the twisting corridors of hive cities to the open battlefields of agri-worlds. They master warfare aboard starships where gravity might fail and combat happens in 3 dimensions. They learn to fight in environments contaminated by radiation or biological warfare, where their armor's life support systems are their only protection against death. They are trained to operate with or without support, to fight as part of a unit or entirely alone. A custodian in a shield company, fighting alongside dozens or hundreds of their brothers, operates as part of a coordinated force with devastating effectiveness. That same custodian, deployed alone to eliminate a specific threat, can function with equal efficiency as a solo operative. This flexibility is rare among warrior forces, where specialization typically limits operational capability. Their training in espionage and infiltration deserves elaboration. While custodians are most famous for their direct approach to combat, their gleaming golden armor making stealth seem impossible, they are actually capable of remarkable subtlety when the situation demands it. A custodian can adopt disguises, can move through crowds without being noticed despite their size, can infiltrate secure facilities through a combination of technical skill, social engineering, and when necessary, violence. During the Blood Games, custodians have infiltrated the Imperial Palace using every method imaginable. Some have disguised themselves as servants, as low-ranking palace officials, as tech priests or administratum clerks. Others have used technical expertise to bypass security systems, or hacking into network terminals, or disabling surveillance equipment. Still others have employed direct assault, cutting through defensive forces with such speed and violence that they reached their objective before effective resistance could be organized. These skills extend to investigation and intelligence gathering. A custodian tasked with uncovering a conspiracy can analyze evidence, interview witnesses, follow leads, and ultimately identify the conspirators with the thoroughness of an inquisitor and the analytical capability of the finest investigators in the Imperium. They can spot lies and deception, can read body language and detect nervousness or guilt, can extract information through either gentle questioning or harsher methods as the situation demands. All of this training, all these skills and capabilities, so combine to create warriors of utterly remarkable ability. A custodian is not just physically superior to other warriors, they are mentally superior as well. They think faster, analyze more thoroughly, adapt more quickly, and plan more effectively. They can operate in any environment, can fight any enemy, can accomplish any mission. They are, in every meaningful sense, perfect warriors, lacking no capability that might be needed in service to the Emperor. And they are equipped with weapons and armor to match their capabilities. The panoply of war that each custodian carries into battle represents the absolute pinnacle of Imperial technology. Equipment so advanced and so finely crafted that even the Mechanicus, with all their accumulated knowledge, cannot fully replicate it. It is to this equipment that we now turn our attention, as to understand how the already formidable capabilities of a custodian are further enhanced by the tools they wield. Arms and armor, the panoply of war. If a naked, unarmored custodian is one of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy, then a fully equipped custodian in their panoply of war is something approaching unstoppable. The weapons and armor of the Adeptus Custodes represent the absolute pinnacle of human technological achievement, equipment so advanced that even the Adeptus Mechanicus cannot fully replicate it. Gear that incorporates secrets from the dark age of technology and techniques that may predate human civilization itself. To understand the true strength of a custodian, we must examine their equipment in detail. Let us begin with their armor, for it is perhaps the most immediately striking aspect of a custodian's appearance. Known as custodian armor, it is a form of power armor far more sophisticated than anything worn by the Adeptus Astartes. Where Space Marine armor is impressive, representing some of the finest protection available in the Imperium, custodian armor exists in a category entirely unto itself. Each suit is custom-made for its wearer, crafted to fit their exact physical dimensions with such precision that it functions as a second skin rather than mere protective equipment. The armor is constructed from a material called auramite, a substance of unknown provenance that possesses extraordinary properties. Auramite is similar to the ceramite used in Space Marine armor, possessing exceptional heat resistance and shock absorption capabilities. But it surpasses ceramite in almost every measurable way. It is stronger, more durable, more resistant to energy weapons and physical impacts alike. A single plate of auramite, properly shaped and treated, can withstand strikes that would shatter ceramite, can turn aside blows from power weapons that would cleave through lesser armor, can protect against temperatures that would melt other materials. The natural color of auramite is a lustrous gold, a hue that has become synonymous with the custodians themselves. This is not paint applied to the surface, but the actual color of the metal itself. Through closely guarded alchemical processes, known only to a handful of artisans on Terra, auramite can be tinted, or its color changed entirely on a molecular level. This allows for customization while maintaining the material's protective properties. Some custodians wear armor in midnight black, others in deep crimson or verdant green, the colors signifying which shield host or shield company they belong to. But the majority retain the traditional gold, marking them unmistakably as the Emperor's chosen guardians. Each suit of custodian armor is a masterwork of the armorer's art. It is not mass-produced in any sense. Where the Mechanicus might forge thousands of suits of Space Marine power armor from standardized templates, each suit of custodian armor is individually crafted by master artificers working over months or even years. They do not simply assemble components according to a pattern. They create a unique piece, tailored specifically to the custodian who will wear it, incorporating that warrior's personal heraldry and honors, adjusting the proportions to match their physique exactly, ensuring that every joint articulates perfectly and every plate provides maximum protection. The inside of each suit bears the name of its owner, inscribed in letters so small that only enhanced vision can read them. This personalization extends to every component. The right shoulder guard of custodian armor depicts the imperial aquila, the two-headed eagle that symbolizes the Emperor's dominion over all humanity. The armor is adorned with precious gems harvested from deep beneath Terra's surface, cut by skilled artisans to precise specifications. These gems are not mere decoration, though they certainly add to the visual magnificence of the armor, when their coloration precisely matches that of the Custodian's shield company, ensuring that even in the chaos of battle, unit affiliation can be identified at a glance. The protective capabilities of Custodian armor far exceed those of even Astartes' power armor. It incorporates multiple defensive systems working in concert. The auramite plates themselves provide exceptional passive protection, capable of withstanding tremendous impacts and energy discharge. But the armor also includes refraction field generators, advanced force field technology that creates a protective barrier around the wearer. These fields can deflect energy weapons, can cause physical projectiles to slide off harmlessly, can even provide protection against psychic attacks to some degree. The armor's sensor systems are extraordinarily sophisticated, and each suit includes proximity detectors that alert the wearer to nearby threats, enhanced optics that can switch between multiple visual spectrums, communications equipment that functions across incredible distances, and tactical displays that provide real-time battlefield information. The helmet includes an advanced respirator and atmospheric processor, allowing the wearer to function in environments that would be immediately lethal to unprotected humans, from the void of space to atmospheres thick with poison or radiation. One remarkable property of auramite deserves special mention. It is almost inert at a quantum level, making it far less inhibiting to the manipulation of psychic energy than other protective materials. During the Siege of Terra, as the Emperor wore his own auramite battleplate while fighting his immaterial battle with the Chaos Gods within the warp. Bare skin would have been optimal for channeling such tremendous psychic power, but the energies the Emperor unleashed while seated upon the Golden Throne were so immense that they would have burned his flesh to bone. The auramite armor protected him while minimizing interference with his psychic abilities, a balance that no other material could achieve. The armor is powered by advanced energy cells and miniaturized reactor systems, providing effectively unlimited operational endurance. A Custodian in their armor can fight for weeks without requiring recharge or refueling. The power systems drive servo motors that enhance the wearer's already superhuman strength, while allowing them to wield weapons that would be impossible for even an unarmored Custodian to use effectively. These servo motors are masterworks of engineering, operating silently and smoothly, adding their force to the Custodian's strikes without creating any delay or resistance in movement. Maintenance of Custodian armor is a sacred duty. Each Custodian personally tends to their armor, cleaning and blessing it after every deployment, checking each component for the smallest sign of wear or damage, performing rituals of care that have been passed down through 10,000 years. They know every plate, every servo, every circuit of their armor intimately. They can perform field repairs if necessary, can replace damaged components, or even fabricate replacement parts if the proper facilities are available. The armor is not just equipment to them, it is a trusted companion, a second skin, a manifestation of their oath to protect the Emperor. Now, let us turn our attention to the weapons that Custodians wield, for they are as remarkable as the armor that protects them. The most iconic weapon of the Adeptus Custodes is undoubtedly the Guardian Spear, a weapon that has been associated with the Custodians since the time of the Unification Wars. This is no mere spear in the traditional sense. It is a massive halberd-like power weapon, incorporating both a devastating close combat blade and an integrated ranged weapon, allowing a Custodian to engage enemies at any distance with equal effectiveness. The Guardian Spear is so heavy that it would require several normal men working together just to lift it. Even a Space Marine would find wielding such a weapon challenging, requiring both hands and considerable effort. A Custodian spins these weapons in great sweeping arcs with one hand, using them with such speed and precision that they blur in the air. The weapon becomes an extension of their body, moving with perfect fluidity, creating a defensive perimeter that nothing can penetrate, while simultaneously offering devastating offensive capability. The blade of the Guardian Spear is surrounded by a power field that disrupts molecular bonds on contact. This field allows the weapon to cleave through virtually any material, cutting ceramite armor as easily as unarmored flesh, shearing through defensive barriers and fortifications. A single strike from a Guardian Spear can bisect a Chaos Space Marine. It can cut through the hull of a light vehicle, can decapitate even massive enemies. In the hands of a skilled Custodian, the Guardian Spear becomes an implement of terrible slaughter, each swing precisely calculated to maximize damage, each strike flowing seamlessly into the next in combinations that are as beautiful as they are deadly. The integrated ranged weapon, typically a sophisticated bolter known as a boltcaster, allows the Custodian to engage enemies at distance without switching weapons. This is not a standard bolter. It is a highly advanced weapon firing specially crafted ammunition available nowhere else in the Imperium. The boltcaster can lay down a devastating rate of fire, cutting down enemies at range with the same efficiency that the power blade offers in close combat. This dual functionality makes the Guardian Spear extraordinarily versatile, allowing Custodians to adapt to any tactical situation without being caught wrong-footed. Some Guardian Spears mount even more exotic weaponry. In place of the standard boltcaster, some incorporate compact melter weapons known as melter beams, able to fire superheated beams that can melt through even the heaviest armor. Others mount adrathic weapons, also called adrathic destructors, or disintegration beamers, forbidden technology from the dark age of technology that literally disintegrates targets at an atomic level. These weapons are so rare and so dangerous that their use is restricted even within the Custodians, deployed only against the most formidable enemies. For Custodians who prefer a more defensive fighting style, there exists the combination of Sentinel Blade and Presidium Shield. The Sentinel Blade is a massive power sword, so large that its hilt is flanked by the double barrels of an integrated weapon called a boltcaster. This weapon can lay down a hail of short-range fire while the wielder engages in close combat. Despite its size, a Custodian wields the Sentinel Blade one-handed with perfect control, the weapon moving with such speed that it seems weightless. The Presidium Shield is a true bulwark, an armored shield of such size and strength that it can protect not just the wielder, but allies fighting beside them. Its protective capabilities are augmented by built-in energy shield generators that create a force field across its surface, allowing it to turn aside even the most powerful attacks. And a Custodian wielding a Presidium Shield can advance into withering fire without slowing, the shield absorbing impacts that would destroy lesser warriors, creating a mobile fortress that enemies cannot breach. This combination of blade and shield transforms a Custodian into an immovable object on the battlefield. They can hold defensive positions that would require entire companies of Space Marines to maintain, can advance through fire that would devastate normal forces, can serve as the anchor point around which entire battle plans revolve. During the Siege of Terror, Custodians wielding shields held critical choke points against overwhelming chaos forces, their formations creating walls of auramite and energy fields that the enemies could not penetrate. There are also specialized weapons for specific roles. The Castellan Axe, wielded by some Custodians, including many shield captains, is a massive power weapon that combines devastating cutting power with integrated ranged weapons. The Paragon Spear, used by the most noted shield captains and tribunes, represents the finest craftsmanship in the Custodian's arsenal, incorporating a Paragon bolter of exceptional potency. These weapons are not merely tools, but works of art, each one unique, each one bearing a history of glorious deeds spanning millennia. Beyond their personal weapons, Custodians have access to an arsenal that would make even Forge Worlds envious. Adrathic weapons, as mentioned, are forbidden technology so dangerous that wars were fought over them during the Age of Strife. The Mechanicus desperately desires access to these weapons, but the Custodians share their secrets with no one. And adrathic disintegration beamers simply erase their targets from existence, breaking down matter at an atomic level and leaving nothing behind but scattered particles. Against enemies that can regenerate from even catastrophic damage, that can return from death through sorcery or technology, these weapons offer permanent solutions. Lastrum weapons are another category of forbidden armament exclusive to the Custodians. These advanced firearms incorporate technology that the wider Imperium has lost, firing projectiles with such velocity and precision that they can penetrate virtually any armor. The exact nature of Lastrum weapons remains classified even within Imperial records, but their effectiveness is undeniable. A Custodian armed with a Lastrum Stormbolter can eliminate threats at distances, and with accuracy that standard weapons cannot match. The vehicles and equipment used by Custodians further demonstrate their access to advanced technology. While much of the Imperium relies on tracked vehicles or simple wheeled transports, the Custodians make extensive use of anti-gravity technology. Their vehicles, from the Grav Rhino transports to the Caladius, Pallas, and Coronis grav tanks, hover above the ground using gravitational manipulation, allowing them to traverse terrain that would stop conventional vehicles, to move with speed and agility that belies their armored protection. The Paragon pattern jet bike, used by Custodians for rapid response and flanking maneuvers, represents some of the finest personal vehicle technology in the Imperium. These bikes can achieve tremendous speeds, can operate in environments ranging from open battlefields to the cramped confines of hive cities, and are armed with weaponry that would overwhelm infantry formations. A Custodian on a jet bike becomes a golden meteor, streaking across the battlefield faster than enemy weapons can track, striking with devastating force and disappearing before effective retaliation can be organized. For air support, the Custodians use Orion and Ares gunships, aircraft so advanced that they incorporate technologies the Mechanicus cannot fully understand, let alone replicate. These gunships can deploy Custodians directly into combat zones, can provide devastating fire support, and can extract warriors from situations that would trap conventional forces. Yet they operate with such sophistication that they respond to their pilot's intentions almost before commands are given, the machine spirits within them having been crafted with such care that they function almost as partners rather than mere tools. Perhaps most remarkably, Custodians have access to teleportation technology far more reliable than that used by the wider Imperium. Standard teleportation, as employed by Space Marine Terminators, is a risky proposition. Teleporter accidents are not uncommon, with warriors sometimes arriving at their destination scattered across a wide area, or worse, materialized within solid objects or lost in the warp entirely. Custodian teleportation arrays, using Godstrike pattern technology, are so precise and so reliable that even Contemptor dreadnoughts, a massive walking sarcophagi containing the near-dead remains of fallen Custodians, can be teleported directly into battle without significant risk. This teleportation capability allows for tactical options unavailable to other forces. Custodians can appear in storms of golden light in the midst of enemy formations, can deploy with perfect precision to exactly where they are needed most, can extract themselves from untenable positions before they can be overwhelmed. The psychological impact of this cannot be overstated. Enemies cannot rely on defensive positions to protect them from Custodians, cannot assume that distance provides safety, must constantly be prepared for the appearance of golden armored warriors who simply materialize from nowhere and begin killing with ruthless efficiency. All of this equipment, from the armor to the weapons to the vehicles and advanced technology, is maintained to standards that border on the obsessive. Custodians do not delegate the care of their equipment to servitors or tech priests. Each warrior personally tends to their gear, performs maintenance rituals passed down through generations, checks and rechecks every component to ensure absolute reliability. Nothing is allowed to degrade. Nothing is permitted to function at less than perfect efficiency. Equipment failures simply do not happen among the Custodians, not because they are impossible, but because such failures are prevented through constant vigilance and meticulous care. The total value of a single Custodian's equipment has been described as worth a planet's ransom. This is not hyperbole. The auramite alone, as a material so rare that most of the Imperium has never even heard of it, would be worth more than entire continents of standard industrial output. The forbidden weapons, the advanced technology, the custom craftsmanship, all of it combines to create a total value that is essentially incalculable. And each custodian carries this fortune into battle without a second thought, focused entirely on their duty rather than the material worth of their equipment. With this understanding of the weapons and armor that custodians employ, we can better appreciate the legendary warriors who have wielded them throughout history. Let us now turn our attention to the individuals who have led the custodians, who have earned renown even among these renowned warriors, the legendary figures whose deeds echo through 10,000 years of history. At legendary warriors and leadership, among the 10,000 warriors who comprise the Adeptus Custodes, there have been individuals who stand out, even in this company of legends. These are the warriors whose deeds have become the stuff of myth, whose names are spoken with reverence even millennia after their disappearance or death, whose leadership and martial prowess set standards that future generations aspire to match. To understand the custodians at their finest, we must examine these remarkable individuals. First among equals, greatest of all custodians who have ever existed, stands Constantine Valdor, the first of the 10,000. Known also as the Emperor's Spear and the Shield of the Emperor, Valdor was the original Captain General of the Legio Custodes, serving from the earliest days of the Unification Wars through the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy. His full name, according to custodian tradition, was composed of 1,932 words, each one a title earned through glorious deeds, each one representing an honor so significant that it warranted permanent inclusion in his formal designation. Constantine Valdor was not merely the first custodian, he was in many ways the template for all who followed. The Emperor himself spent tremendous time and effort searching for Valdor, suggesting that even before his transformation, there was something exceptional about him. Once found and transformed, Valdor became the Emperor's closest companion, a being whose loyalty was so absolute, whose capabilities were so refined, that the master of mankind trusted him above all others, save perhaps Malcador the Sigillite. Valdor's martial prowess was such that he was often compared to the Primarchs themselves. While he could not match them in raw power, they were, after all, genetically engineered demigods imbued with portions of the Emperor's own essence. His skill with weapons was such that he could duel them on relatively equal terms. In one famous incident, Valdor fought Alfarius to a standstill without even realizing he faced a Primarch. Alfarius later commented that he could have killed Valdor had he wished to, an opinion that apparently annoyed Valdor considerably. But the very fact that Valdor could engage a Primarch in single combat and emerge alive speaks to his incredible skill. During the Battle of Prospero, but when the Space Wolves and Custodians assaulted the homeworld of Magnus the Red and the Thousand Suns, Valdor faced over 30 of Magnus's elite blade masters simultaneously. These were not ordinary warriors, but the finest swordsmen of the Thousand Suns Legion, psychers who could predict their opponent's attacks through precognitive visions granted by their psychic powers. Against such opponents, most warriors would be hopelessly outmatched. Valdor slew them all and received only a single wound in the process, a demonstration of combat prowess that borders on the incomprehensible. Valdor wielded a weapon called the Apollonian Spear, believed to have been crafted by the Emperor himself and once carried by the Master of Mankind in battle during the Unification Wars. This weapon incorporated both a power blade of exceptional potency and an integrated bolter far superior to even the finest weapons carried by other custodians. The spear possessed another property as well. It granted Valdor visions of the lives of those he killed with it. He would experience their entire existence in a moment, understanding why they fought and how they came to oppose the Emperor. The Emperor apparently intended this as a check on Valdor's power, ensuring he never became too callous about killing. This feature became problematic when Valdor began killing Chaos Space Marines and demons with it, exposing him to visions of corruption and madness that might have broken lesser minds. Valdor's influence extended beyond his personal combat prowess, yet he held a seat on the Council of Terror alongside Malcador, and the Fabricator General of Mars, providing counsel on military and strategic matters. After the Emperor's internment upon the Golden Throne, Valdor became one of the first High Lords of the Imperium, helping to shape the government that would guide humanity through the dark millennia ahead. His tactical genius and strategic vision were instrumental in organizing the Imperium's defenses during some of its darkest hours. And then, mysteriously, he vanished. Following the Horus Heresy, at some point when the Imperium was transitioning from the Emperor's direct rule to the bureaucratic structure of the High Lords, Constantin Valdor simply disappeared. He left behind only his Apollonian spear, which was subsequently passed to his successors as a symbol of office. Where he went, why he left, what mission might have drawn him away from his post at the Emperor's side, these questions remain unanswered mysteries that have puzzled Imperial scholars for 10,000 years. There are theories, of course. Some believe he went on a quest similar to those undertaken by some of the loyal Primarchs, searching for some lost relic or pursuing some terrible enemy into the darkness. Others suggest he may have died on some secret mission and the Custodians simply concealed his death to maintain morale. Still others whisper that he might return, that like Robuta Guilliman, he is merely sleeping somewhere, waiting for the hour when the Imperium needs him most. In the novel Two Metaphysical Blades, it is suggested that Valdor disappeared at the same time as Leman Russ, both having received psychic visions through their Emperor-crafted weapons, but what those visions showed or where they might have led remains unknown. Fast forward 10,000 years to the present day, and we find Trajan Valoris, the current Captain General and 17th warrior to hold that title since Constantine Valdor. Many claim that Valoris is the greatest warrior to hold the position since the legendary Valdor himself, a statement that carries tremendous weight given the caliber of the warriors who have served between Valdor's time and the present. Trajan Valoris distinguished himself long before ascending to the rank of Captain General. Within his first decade of service, he successfully completed not one but 2 blood games, achieving a record that remains unmatched to this day. These victories marked him as exceptional even among the Custodians, demonstrating not just combat prowess, but also tactical genius, creativity, and the ability to think several moves ahead of even other Custodians. Such achievements virtually guaranteed his eventual rise to leadership. When Captain General Andros Lanchedra fell at the Battle of the Black Pyre, Valoris was named his successor. Following tradition, he took up the armor and weapons of his predecessor, gear that had been passed down through the line of Captain Generals since Constantine Valdor's disappearance. The Watcher's Axe, Valoris's signature weapon, is a master-crafted relic Castellan axe that was forged in the wake of Valdor's vanishing. And it takes the form of a massive polearm blade that crackles with golden lightning and possesses such cutting power that it can bisect the sarcophagus of a Chaos Hellbrute with a single swing. The axe's haft incorporates a master-crafted bolter weapon known as the Eagle's Scream, which fires adamantium-tipped penetrator bolts at a ferocious rate. Valoris wears the Auric Armor, a suit of Custodian armor that represents the absolute finest work the Custodian's artificers can produce, incorporating every advanced defensive technology available to the 10,000. He carries an ancient storm shield that has protected every Captain General since Valdor, a bulwark that has turned aside blows from demon princes and enemy Primarchs. Together, these artifacts make Valoris one of the most formidably equipped warriors in the entire Imperium. But his equipment, impressive as it is, represents only a fraction of what makes Valoris remarkable. He possesses a brilliant tactical mind, one of the finest strategic intellects in the Imperium. He serves as one of the High Lords of Terra, providing military counsel to the Senatorum Imperialis, and his recommendations carry weight that few other voices can match. Even Robuta Guilliman, the returned Primarch and Lord Commander of the Imperium, treats Valoris as a trusted advisor rather than a subordinate. Valoris's name is spoken with such reverence throughout the Imperium that to mock him would be considered blasphemy equivalent to mocking the Emperor himself. Such an insult would result in swift and certain death, not from official sanction, but from the outraged response of loyal imperial citizens. While he is seen as the personal representative of the emperor, the voice through which the master of mankind's will is expressed in military matters. To question Valoris is to question the emperor, an unthinkable act of heresy. Under Valoris's leadership, the Adeptus Custodes have emerged from their 10,000-year vigil on Terra to take a more active role in the Imperium's defense. This represents a significant shift in policy, one that required tremendous political maneuvering to achieve. For millennia, the Custodians remained at the Imperial Palace, guarding the Emperor's physical form and leaving the defense of the wider Imperium to the Space Marines and Imperial Guard. Valoris convinced the other High Lords that the current crisis facing humanity, the return of the Primarch Guilliman, the emergence of the Great Rift, the massive chaos invasions, and the awakening of the Necrons, demands that the Custodians deploy beyond Terra. This decision has had profound implications. Custodian shield companies now fight alongside other Imperial forces across the galaxy, bringing their unmatched combat prowess to bear against humanity's most dangerous enemies. Their presence on battlefields that previously knew only Space Marines and Guard has shifted the balance of numerous conflicts, their golden armor becoming a symbol of hope in humanity's darkest hour. Beyond Valdor and Valoris, there are other Custodians whose deeds deserve recognition. Ra Endymion served as tribune during the war in the Webway, eventually becoming the last surviving tribune after his fellows fell in that terrible conflict. He led the Custodian forces through weeks of brutal warfare against demonic hordes, maintaining discipline and tactical cohesion, even as casualties mounted to catastrophic levels. His leadership prevented what could have been a complete disaster from becoming a total rout, holding the line long enough for the Emperor to intervene personally. Diocletian Koros, another tribune during the Webway War, was charged with securing reinforcements from Terra when the Imperial forces in the Webway faced imminent collapse. Due to the secrecy of the Emperor's Webway project and the limited resources available during the heresy, Koros had to make do with whatever forces he could scrape together. Doomed prisoners from House Viridian, a crippled blood angel named Dominion Zephon, and various Mechanicum servitors and Skitari. His ability to coordinate these disparate forces into an effective fighting formation speaks to his tactical genius. Aquion, bearing the title Oculi Imperator, served as prefect of the Haikanatoi and was assigned to watch Lorgar and the Word-bearers during the Great Crusade. He maintained his vigil despite growing evidence of Lorgar's corruption, reporting his concerns to his superiors while attempting to gather definitive proof of the Primarch's treachery. Aquilon ultimately died during Lorgar's betrayal, giving his life in an attempt to stop the Word-bearers from completing their dark rituals, a futile but heroic sacrifice that exemplifies the Custodian commitment to duty. Sagittarius Malak holds the distinction of being one of the first Custodians to become a dreadnought, those massive walking sarcophagi that house the shattered bodies of fallen warriors. Noted for being choleric and wild even by Custodian standards, Malak was nearly killed during the war in the Webway, but survived thanks to intervention from a blood angel. The Emperor himself inscribed a quote on Malak's dreadnought shell: "Only in death does duty end," words that have since become famous throughout the Imperium, associated with the Adeptus Astartes, but actually originating with a Custodian. The office of Captain General itself deserves examination. This position represents one of the most powerful military appointments in the Imperium, conferring full responsibility for the defense of the Sol System, Terra, the Imperial Palace, and ultimately the Golden Throne and the Emperor himself. The Captain General serves as master of the Adeptus Custodes and, during times of crisis, often holds a seat among the High Lords of Terra. The position requires a degree of warrior prowess that approaches that of the Primarchs of old, combined with tactical genius and political acumen sufficient to navigate the treacherous waters of imperial politics. In the millennia since the Great Crusade, there have been only 17 Captain Generals, an astonishingly small number that reflects both the longevity of Custodians and the difficulty of the position. Most captain generals have died in battle, either on Terra defending the Imperial Palace or while leading crucial campaigns among the stars. Several have become Eyes of the Emperor, a mysterious rank about which little is publicly known, but which seems to involve special missions of tremendous importance. And 3, including Constantine Valdor himself, simply vanished, their disappearances shrouded in mystery even among their own comrades. This low turnover rate means that each captain general leaves an indelible mark on the Custodes and the Imperium. Their decisions, their tactical doctrines, their strategic visions shape how the 10,000 operate for centuries or even millennia. Valoris's decision to deploy Custodians beyond Terra represents the most significant change in Custodian doctrine in 10,000 years, a shift that will likely define the order for millennia to come. The leadership structure of the Custodes is notably flat compared to other military organizations. Below the Captain General, there are typically 2 tribunes, though during the Heresy era there were 3. Individual squads and larger formations are overseen by shield captains, but the hierarchy is described as somewhat informal, more a matter of respect toward veterans and gifted individuals than a true command structure. This reflects the Custodians' nature as individually capable warriors rather than cogs in a military machine. Every Custodian is expected to be able to operate independently, to command if necessary, to make strategic decisions without requiring orders from above. The Tower of Hegemon within the Imperial Palace serves as the Custodes' command and control headquarters, a fortress within a fortress from which the defense of Terra is coordinated. Here, the Captain General and his senior officers plan campaigns, assess threats, and make decisions that affect the entire Imperium. Here also are maintained the records of every Custodian who has ever served, chronicles of their deeds and honors, archives stretching back 10,000 years to the earliest days of the Unification Wars. These legendary warriors, both those whose names are known throughout the Imperium and the countless others whose deeds are recorded only in the Custodes' own histories, represent the finest humanity has ever produced. They combine physical perfection with mental brilliance, tactical genius with unwavering loyalty, individual excellence with the ability to coordinate when necessary. They are the living embodiment of the Emperor's vision for humanity, proof that humans can aspire to heights that approach the divine. And they have proven their worth in battle time and again, as across 10,000 years of warfare against every enemy humanity has ever faced. Let us now examine some of these battles, these crucibles, where Custodians demonstrated their strength against impossible odds and emerged victorious through skill, determination, and absolute dedication to their duty. Major battles and campaigns. The strength of the Adeptus. Custodes has been tested across 10 millennia of warfare, in battles ranging from the close confines of the Imperial Palace to the twisting dimensions of the Webway, from the streets of Terra during the siege to battlefields across the galaxy in the 42nd millennium. To truly understand their capabilities, we must examine specific engagements where they demonstrated their worth, but campaigns that tested them to their limits and proved that even the smallest number of Custodians can turn the tide of entire wars. The earliest recorded deployment of Custodians in significant numbers came during the Battle of Morland Sen, one of the first major conflicts of the Unification Wars. This battle saw the Emperor deploy an entire legion of newly created Thunder Warriors, alongside 30 Custodians, led by Constantine Valdor. The Morland Sen Confederacy was one of the most formidable opponents the Emperor faced during his conquest of Terra, fielding armies equipped with technology that rivaled or even exceeded what the nascent Imperium could bring to bear. The battle was brutal, a grinding assault against fortified positions defended by warriors who refused to surrender. The Thunder Warriors were powerful but unstable Gene Warriors who predated the Space Marines, suffered tremendous casualties, but eventually broke through the enemy defenses. The Custodians, fighting at the Emperor's side, demonstrated a level of martial prowess that impressed even the Thunder Warriors. They moved through enemy ranks with precision and devastating efficiency, their golden armor gleaming amidst the smoke and fire of battle, each one worth dozens or even hundreds of normal soldiers. This battle was significant not just for its military outcome, but for what it revealed about the Custodian's capabilities and Valdor's character. He witnessed the savagery and instability of the Thunder Warriors firsthand, noting their tendency toward excessive violence and their unreliability once the bloodlust took them. These observations would later influence his decision to support the Emperor's plan to eliminate the Thunder Warriors and replace them with the more stable Space Marines. A decision that would have tremendous implications for the Imperium's future. The Battle of Mount Ararat represents one of the darkest chapters in the Custodian's history, though it was deemed a necessary action. When the Emperor decided that the Thunder Warriors had outlived their usefulness and posed too great a risk to be allowed to continue existing, it fell to the Custodians and the newly created Legion of Space Marines to eliminate them. Valdor personally led this operation, orchestrating what the Thunder Warriors believed would be a final glorious battle, but what was in reality a carefully planned execution. The Thunder Warriors, some of the most formidable warriors humanity had ever created to that point, fought with desperate courage once they realized the truth, but they were outmatched by the combined forces of Custodians and Astartes. The Custodians in particular proved devastatingly effective, their superior genetic engineering and equipment allowing them to overcome even the Thunder Warriors' raw physical might. Valdor would later acknowledge that the betrayal of the Thunder Warriors was a crime, but also maintained that it was a necessary sacrifice in light of the future it helped build. During the Great Crusade, Custodians typically deployed in small numbers, serving as the Emperor's personal bodyguard or accompanying important imperial figures as protectors and emissaries. They fought in countless battles across the galaxy, but always in a supporting role rather than as primary combatants. The Space Marine legions carried the burden of conquest, while the Custodians ensured the Emperor's safety and the security of his most important assets. But everything changed with the war in the Webway, a conflict so significant and so devastating that it deserves detailed examination. This war began when Magnus the Red, Primarch of the Thousand Suns, used sorcery to send a warning to the Emperor about Horus's betrayal. Magnus's psychic sending, transmitted with tremendous power across the vast distances of the galaxy, punched through the psychic shields the Emperor had erected around the Imperial Palace. These shields were not merely protecting the palace, but also sealing a portal into the Webway. It's the ancient Eldari network of tunnels through the warp that the Emperor had been secretly working to access and adapt for humanity's use. When Magnus's warning breached these shields, it shattered them, creating great rifts in the Webway portal. Through these rifts, demonic entities from the warp gained access to the Webway itself, beginning an invasion that threatened not just the Emperor's project, but potentially Terra itself. The Custodians, along with the Sisters of Silence and forces from the Mechanicum, were thrown into a desperate defensive battle unlike anything they had faced before. The war in the Webway was fought in a dimension that defied normal understanding of physics. The Webway is a space between real space and the warp, a network of tunnels and chambers created by the old ones millions of years ago. The Emperor had been constructing a new section of Webway that would allow humanity to travel through the galaxy without relying on warp travel, protected from the predations of chaos. Now, this under-construction section became a battleground. The Imperial forces centered their defense around an abandoned Eldari city called Kalastar, known as the Impossible City, defending the Webway tunnels the Mechanicum had constructed under the Emperor's direction. The Emperor himself sat upon the Golden Throne, using his psychic might to hold the Webway's structure together, preventing it from completely collapsing into the warp. This meant he could not lead his forces in battle, could not even leave the throne for fear that the entire structure would disintegrate. The Custodians, numbering perhaps 10,000 at the war's beginning, all bore the brunt of the defense. They faced wave after wave of demonic entities, creatures of pure chaos that emerged from the rifts in endless numbers, bloodthirsters, massive greater demons of Khorne, standing as tall as dreadnoughts and wielding axes that could cleave through ceramite. Horrors of Tzeentch that fought with sorcerous fire and impossible geometry. Plague-bearers that rotted everything they touched. Demonettes that moved with hypnotic grace and struck with poisoned claws. The Custodians fought for weeks without meaningful rest, holding defensive positions that should have been impossible to maintain. They established kill zones where demons could be destroyed in vast numbers, used the terrain of the webway to channel enemy forces into choke points, where Custodian firepower could be brought to bear most effectively. They adapted their tactics on the fly as new types of demons appeared, as Chaos found new ways to assault their positions. But the casualties were horrific. Custodians fell by the hundreds, then by the thousands. The Custodes were reduced by 90% over the course of the war, going from 10,000 warriors to roughly 1,000. 2 of the 3 commanding tribunes were killed, leaving Ra Endymion as the primary imperial officer. The Sisters of Silence, fighting alongside the Custodians, suffered similarly catastrophic losses. The very best humanity could produce was being ground down by the infinite hordes of chaos, and still they held. Through weeks of continuous combat, through injuries that would have killed lesser warriors, through exhaustion that would have broken the minds of normal soldiers, as the Custodians maintained their positions, they fought with half their faces missing, with portions of their skulls removed, with debilitating injuries that should have rendered them unconscious from shock alone. They continued because duty demanded it, because the alternative was allowing demons to breach the portal and assault Terra itself, because the Emperor depended on them. The situation grew increasingly desperate as the war dragged on. Chaos forces began deploying not just demons, but also corrupted space marines, traitor Astartes, who had turned to the ruinous powers during the early stages of the Horus heresy. These traitors brought with them the tactics and discipline that made the Legionnaires Astartes such formidable warriors, combined with the dark gifts of chaos. Chaos Titans appeared as well. Massive war machines corrupted by demonic possession, weapons platforms that dwarfed even the Custodians' impressive size. The walls of Kalistar were eventually shattered by Warhound Titans of the Legio Audax, chaos war machines that hammered the city's defenses with plasma weapons and void shields. Brutal fighting raged for weeks as the Custodians and their allies attempted to hold every street, every building, every corridor against overwhelming numbers. The Sisters of Silence fought with desperate courage, their null abilities providing some protection against sorcery, but offering no defense against the purely physical threats of Chaos Warriors and Demon Claws. When it became clear that Kalistar could not be held, the Mechanicum forces attempted to retreat, while intending to abandon the Custodians and Sisters to their fate, while securing the webway route to Mars for their own purposes. This betrayal was thwarted when the Archimandrite, leader of the Mechanicum forces, was possessed by a powerful demon known as Draknyen. Her gigantic mechanical form was used to attack both the retreating Mechanicum and the Custodians, creating chaos in what should have been an organized withdrawal. The Imperial forces were driven all the way back to the webway gate that led directly to Terra itself. Here, at the absolute final defensive position, with Terra itself only steps away through the portal, the Custodians prepared to make their last stand. They had been reduced to roughly 1,000 warriors from their original 10,000. They were exhausted, wounded, many carrying injuries that would have killed normal humans many times over. But they stood ready to fight to the last warrior if necessary, to hold the gate or die in the attempt. It was at this moment of ultimate desperation that salvation arrived, though at terrible cost. The unspoken sanction, a secret project that had been proceeding on Terra, was finally completed. This device allowed the Golden Throne to function temporarily without the Emperor maintaining it through his constant psychic effort. 1,000 captured psychers were sacrificed to power the throne, their life energies consumed to keep the webway portal stable for a single day. Free from his prison for that brief time, the Emperor himself plunged into the webway. He appeared before the chaos hordes as a burning dawn. There's a figure of such radiant power that demons were incinerated by his mere presence. Golden psychic fire erupted from him, flames that burned with the purity of the Emperor's will, destroying demonic entities by the thousands. He summoned an army of loyal Imperial dead, psychic constructs wreathed in golden flame. These included the blazing avatars of fallen Custodians, the betrayed dead Marines of Istvan V, and most remarkably, what appeared to be the spirit of Ferrus Manus, the 10th Primarch, who had been slain by Fulgrim during the heresy, temporarily reborn in his father's immolating wrath. The Emperor drove deep into the chaos forces, reaping a terrible toll, his psychic might annihilating demons that had survived weeks of Custodian assaults. The exhausted Custodians were reinvigorated by their master's presence, Yam fighting alongside him with renewed strength. For a brief, glorious moment, it seemed as if victory might be possible, as if the Emperor would simply destroy every demon in the webway and seal the breaches through raw psychic power. But then, Drachnien itself appeared. This was not merely a powerful demon, but something far more terrible. A manifestation of the first murder, of humanity's original sin when the first human killed another human. Drachnien proclaimed itself the Emperor's end, and in a confrontation that defied mortal understanding, it fought the master of mankind himself. The Emperor could not destroy Drachnien, for to do so would require destroying something fundamental to humanity's nature. Instead, he imprisoned it in the flesh of a Custodian named Ra-Endymion, sealing the demon away, but at terrible cost to the warrior who bore it. Ultimately, despite the Emperor's intervention, the webway could not be saved. The rifts were too great, the damage too extensive, the forces of chaos too numerous. The Emperor ordered a retreat, and the Imperial forces withdrew to Terra, sealing the webway gate behind them. The Emperor returned to the Golden Throne, this time permanently, using his psychic might to hold the gate closed and prevent demonic invasion of Terra itself. He has remained there ever since, unable to leave, his immense power barely sufficient to maintain the seal. The war in the webway was a defeat, albeit one that prevented an even greater catastrophe. But it demonstrated beyond any doubt the incredible fortitude and fighting capability of the Adeptus Custodes. They had held against impossible odds for weeks on end, had suffered 90% casualties and continued fighting, had maintained discipline and tactical cohesion, even as their numbers dwindled to a fraction of their original strength. Any other force in the Imperium would have broken long before, would have routed or been annihilated. The Custodians held because they could not conceive of doing otherwise, because duty demanded it, because the Emperor depended on them. The siege of Terra that followed during the climax of the Horus Heresy saw the Custodians once again prove their worth. With the Emperor bound to the Golden Throne, maintaining the seal on the webway, the Custodians could not deploy in force to combat the traitor forces ravaging the Imperium. But when Horus and his traitor legions finally reached Terra itself, when the final battle for humanity's future began, the Custodians were there. They fought alongside the loyal Space Marine legions and the Imperial army, defending the walls of the Imperial Palace against overwhelming numbers. The traitors threw everything they had at Terra's defenses. Entire traitor legions of corrupted Astartes, massive Titan war engines corrupted by demonic possession, hordes of human cultists, and worst of all, demonic entities that poured through breaches in reality as chaos itself assaulted the material universe. The Custodians held critical positions throughout the palace, their golden armor becoming beacons of hope for the defenders. Where Custodians stood, the line held. Where they counterattacked, the traitors fell back. They did not waver even as megatons of explosive death rained from the burning skies, even as demonic abominations spilled through tears in reality, even as chaos titans hammered the palace walls with weapons that could level hive cities. The culmination of the siege came when the Emperor teleported aboard Horus's flagship, the Vengeful Spirit, taking with him a strike force, that included Custodians, Space Marines, and Primarchs. This was an assault into the very heart of the enemy's power, into a ship that had been corrupted by centuries of exposure to chaos, where reality itself twisted and sanity was a liability. The Custodians fought through hordes of Chaos Space Marines and demons, attempting to reach the Emperor as he confronted his fallen son. They were found wanting. Despite their skill, despite their absolute dedication, they could not reach the Emperor in time. Horus, empowered by all four Chaos gods, struck down the Primarch Sanguinius and dealt the Emperor a mortal blow before being slain in turn by his father. The Custodians arrived to find their master broken, dying, requiring immediate transport back to Terra and internment in the Golden Throne, just to preserve his life. This failure has haunted the Custodians for 10,000 years. They had been created to protect the Emperor, and they had failed when it mattered most. That this failure was perhaps inevitable, that even the Primarchs themselves had been unable to reach the Emperor in time, that no force in the galaxy could have prevailed against Horus in his final empowered state. None of this offers comfort. The Custodians carry this perceived failure as a burden, a reminder of what happens when they are not vigilant enough, not strong enough, not fast enough. In the millennia since the heresy, the Custodians largely remained on Terra, guarding the Imperial Palace and the Emperor's physical form. They rarely deployed beyond the solar system, focusing their attention on their sacred duty to protect the master of mankind. But this did not mean they were idle. The Imperial Palace is vast beyond comprehension, a fortress city that covers a significant portion of Terra's surface, and it faces constant threats, both from without and within. During the Age of Apostasy in the 36th Millennium, when the Ecclesiarch Gog Vandire effectively seized control of the Imperium and ruled as a tyrant, the Custodians eventually intervened. Vandire had convinced the brides of the Emperor, an order of warrior women who would later become the Adepta Sororitas, to serve as his personal bodyguards. Yet when forces moved against Vandire, the Custodians attempted to reach him but were blocked by the brides. Rather than simply slaughtering their way through the brides, which they certainly could have done, the Custodians engaged in discussion. They convinced the leader of the brides, Alicia Dominica, to accompany them into the presence of the Emperor himself. What happened during that audience is not recorded, but the effects were immediate and dramatic. The brides rebelled against Vandire, ending his reign and saving the Imperium from continued tyranny. This incident demonstrates the Custodians' capability for more subtle approaches when appropriate, their understanding that brute force is not always the optimal solution. The War of the Beast in the 32nd Millennium saw one of the rare deployments of a Captain General beyond Terra. The Imperium faced an orcish threat of unprecedented scale, a unified force of greenskins that threatened to overwhelm humanity's defenses entirely. The Captain General of that era took a seat among the High Lords of Terra and helped coordinate the Imperium's response, though the specific details of Custodian involvement in the fighting remain classified. For most of the 10 millennia since the heresy, encounters between Custodians and the Imperium's enemies were brief and decisive. A handful of Custodians might deploy to eliminate a specific threat, to recover a vital artifact, to protect an important Imperial figure. They operated in the shadows, their golden armor concealed beneath cloaks or disguises when subtlety was required, revealed in blinding glory when overwhelming force was the answer. They built a reputation as virtually unstoppable, as warriors who never failed in their assigned tasks, as the ultimate solution to problems that defied conventional military approaches. The return of Roboute Guilliman during the early 42nd millennium marked a turning point for the Custodians. When the Primarch awoke from his 10,000-year stasis, when he found the Imperium beset by threats on all sides and struggling to survive, he recognized that the Custodians could no longer afford to remain isolated on Terra. The galaxy was burning, chaos had split it in two with the Great Rift, and humanity needed every advantage it could muster. Trajan Valoris agreed. Under his leadership, the Custodians began deploying beyond Terra in numbers not seen since the Great Crusade. Shield companies of golden warriors were dispatched to critical battlefields across the galaxy, bringing their unmatched combat prowess to bear against humanity's enemies. Their presence immediately shifted the balance of numerous conflicts. During the Gatholomor Crusade, Custodians deployed alongside Grey Knights, the chamber militant of the Ordo Malleus, to combat a massive chaos incursion. The combined force of Custodians, who excel at physical combat and possess unshakable loyalty, and Grey Knights, psychers specially trained to combat demons, proved devastatingly effective. They cleansed world after world of chaos corruption, their advance seemingly unstoppable. In one notable engagement, a force of 40 Alarus Terminators, Custodians, wearing the heaviest pattern of Terminator armor available to the 10,000, and he teleported directly into the heart of a Black Legion formation. These were not merely any chaos forces, but the chosen warriors of Abaddon, the Despoiler himself, veterans of the Long War who had fought for 10,000 years. The Custodians tore through them with contemptuous ease, killing Lord Hadrexus and his entire retinue of Chosen, shattering the Black Legion's command structure and sending the survivors fleeing back into the warp. Dozens of Custodians fell during this engagement, a testament to the ferocity of the fighting, but they achieved their objective completely. Another campaign saw a small force of Custodians defend a critical mountain pass against overwhelming numbers. They deployed Custodian Wardens, as specialists in defensive operations who wear ceremonial robes over their armor and swear binding oaths to fight as immovable sentinels. These warriors held their position against wave after wave of attacks, refusing to yield a single step, their guardian spears and Castellan axes cutting down enemies by the hundreds. Meanwhile, other shield companies struck at the flanks of the enemy formation, using the Custodians' superior mobility and tactical flexibility to pull apart the enemy's coordination and divide their strength. The Custodians have also faced the risen Necrons, ancient machines of living metal that predate humanity by millions of years. These encounters have proven challenging, as Necrons possess technology that can rival or exceed the most advanced Imperial equipment, and their bodies can reassemble after being destroyed. But even against such formidable enemies, Custodians have proven effective. Their weapons can destroy Necron constructs faster than they can regenerate. Their tactical acumen allows them to identify and exploit weaknesses in Necron formations, and their ability to operate independently means they are not crippled when their command structure is disrupted. Against Tyrannid hive fleets, the Custodians have demonstrated why individual excellence matters, even against overwhelming numbers. There are accounts of a single squad of Custodians, just 6 warriors, holding back an entire Tyrannid ground assault with no casualties. This is a feat that even the Blood Angels, who are renowned for their effectiveness against Tyrannids, required far larger forces to accomplish. The Custodians' combination of firepower, durability, and tactical awareness allows them to create kill zones where Tyrannid organisms are destroyed faster than they can advance, turning what should be overwhelming numbers into a manageable threat. The modern Custodians face a galaxy that is perhaps more dangerous than at any time since the Horus Heresy. The Great Rift has split the Imperium in two, with vast regions cut off from Terra and subjected to increased demonic activity. New chaos incursions emerge constantly. The Necrons are awakening from their 60-million-year slumber. Tyrannid hive fleets descend upon Imperial space from beyond the galaxy. Orcish empires rise and fall in cycles of violence. The Eldari, both Craftworld and Dark, pursue their own inscrutable agendas, often at humanity's expense. Against all of these threats, the Custodians deploy with devastating effectiveness. Their strength is not merely physical, though they certainly possess that in abundance. It is the strength of absolute dedication, of 10,000 years of accumulated experience, of training that begins in infancy and continues throughout their entire immortal existence. It is the strength of warriors who were individually crafted to be perfect, who wield equipment that represents the pinnacle of human achievement, who fight with tactical genius that allows them to overcome enemies that vastly outnumber them. The battles and campaigns we have examined represent only a fraction of the Custodians' combat history. There are countless other engagements, smaller actions, where a handful of custodians deployed to eliminate specific threats, secret missions that remain classified even within Imperial records, blood games and training exercises that tested their capabilities to the limit. But from what we can examine, from the documented history of their greatest triumphs and their rare defeats, we can draw clear conclusions about their combat effectiveness and the specific tactical approaches that make them so formidable. Combat doctrine and tactics. Understanding how custodians fight is as important as understanding their physical capabilities. Their combat doctrine differs significantly from that of other Imperial forces, reflecting both their unique capabilities and their specific role as the Emperor's guardians. Where Space Marines fight as coordinated squads using combined arms tactics, where Imperial Guard rely on overwhelming firepower and numerical superiority, our custodians employ an approach that emphasizes individual excellence operating within a framework of perfect coordination. The fundamental principle of custodian combat doctrine is that each warrior is a force unto themselves. A single custodian can accomplish missions that would require an entire squad of Space Marines or a company of Imperial Guard. This is not arrogance or overconfidence, but simple recognition of their capabilities. They are trained from infancy to operate independently, to make tactical decisions without requiring orders, to assess situations and respond with optimal force. This independence allows for tremendous flexibility in deployment and operations. When custodians deploy as part of a shield company or other organized formation, they do not abandon this individual excellence, rather, and they enhance it through coordination that borders on the supernatural. Custodians fighting together move with perfect synchronization, each one aware of their brother's positions and intentions without requiring verbal communication. They have trained together for centuries or millennia in many cases, developing an understanding so complete that they function almost as a single organism with multiple bodies. This coordination is qualitatively different from the squad tactics employed by Space Marines. Astartes fight as units, with each member assigned specific roles within the squad structure. You have tactical Marines providing fire support, assault Marines closing for melee, Devastator Marines delivering heavy weapons fire, each warrior fulfilling their designated function within a larger tactical framework. And the squad succeeds or fails as a unit, individual excellence contributing to but not superseding group effectiveness. Custodians, by contrast, fight as individuals who happen to be coordinating. Each one is capable of fulfilling any role the tactical situation demands. They can provide fire support with their Guardian Spear's integrated bolters, can close for devastating melee combat, can hold defensive positions, or conduct aggressive assaults as needed. They adapt to changing battlefield conditions with fluid ease, each warrior independently assessing the situation and choosing optimal responses that complement their brother's actions without requiring centralized coordination. This has been described as the difference between wolves and tigers. Space Marines are wolves, pack hunters who use coordination and numbers to bring down larger prey. They rely on each other, fight as a unit, achieve victory through combined effort. Custodians are tigers, apex predators who hunt alone but can coordinate when beneficial. Each one is capable of bringing down prey on their own, and when multiple tigers work together, they do so through mutual understanding rather than pack hierarchy. In defensive operations, custodians excel beyond virtually any other force in the Imperium. Their combination of superhuman durability, exceptional equipment, and tactical genius makes them nearly impossible to dislodge from positions they are tasked with holding. During the war in the Webway, they held choke points against demonic hordes for weeks on end. During the Siege of Terror, wherever custodians held the walls, as those sections never fell to enemy assault. In countless smaller actions throughout their history, custodians have turned defensive positions into slaughterhouses where enemies die by the thousands, while the Golden Warriors stand unmoved. Their defensive mastery stems from several factors. First, they can establish optimal firing positions with near-perfect precision, using their enhanced senses and tactical awareness to identify locations that maximize their effectiveness while minimizing their exposure to enemy fire. Second, their weapons provide devastating firepower at all ranges, allowing them to engage enemies from hundreds of meters away with their integrated bolters and to destroy anything that closes to melee range with power weapons. Third, that their durability allows them to absorb fire that would force other warriors to seek cover, maintaining their positions even under concentrated bombardment. But perhaps most importantly, Custodians fighting defensively can use terrain and fortifications with exceptional skill. They understand how to create overlapping fields of fire, how to channel enemies into kill zones, how to use obstacles and barriers to slow attackers while maintaining their own mobility. They can read the flow of battle, anticipate where enemies will attempt to breach their lines, and position themselves to counter threats before they fully develop. In offensive operations, Custodians bring overwhelming violence to bear with surgical precision. They are not blunt instruments that simply charge into enemy ranks and hack their way through, though they certainly can fight that way when appropriate. More often, they conduct offensive operations with the finesse of a master surgeon, identifying critical targets, eliminating them with maximum efficiency, and moving to the next objective before enemies can mount effective resistance. Their offensive doctrine emphasizes speed, violence, and shock. Custodians strike hard and fast, using their superior mobility to close with enemies before they can establish effective defensive positions. They exploit weaknesses ruthlessly, concentrating force at critical points to shatter enemy formations, and they maintain relentless pressure, never allowing defeated enemies time to recover or reorganize. Teleportation capabilities feature prominently in Custodian offensive operations. The ability to appear directly in the midst of enemy formations, to bypass defensive lines and strike at vulnerable command elements, to extract themselves from danger before being overwhelmed. All of this provides tactical options that other forces simply do not possess. A shield company might teleport directly into an enemy headquarters, eliminate the command staff, and disappear before effective response can be organized, decapitating the enemy leadership in a single decisive strike. Their approach to combined arms warfare also differs from conventional Imperial doctrine. Where most Imperial forces organize their forces into distinct elements with specialized roles, mechanized infantry supported by armor, supported by artillery, supported by air power, Custodians integrate all capabilities into their basic unit structure. Each Custodian carries both ranged and melee weapons of exceptional quality. Their vehicles and aircraft provide both transport and fire support. Their forces can adapt to any situation without requiring complicated coordination between different unit types. This integration extends to their relationship with other Imperial forces when they fight alongside them. Custodians can work effectively with Space Marines, Imperial Guard, or other allies, but they do not integrate into those forces' command structures. Rather, they coordinate at the strategic level while maintaining tactical independence. A Captain General or Shield Captain might work with a Space Marine Chapter Master to plan a campaign, but once combat is joined, the Custodians operate according to their own doctrine, while the Astartes operate according to theirs. In situations requiring stealth or subterfuge, Custodians employ tactics that seem at odds with their iconic golden armor and reputation for overwhelming force. But they are trained extensively in infiltration, espionage, and covert operations. During blood games, Custodians regularly penetrate the Imperial Palace's supposedly impregnable defenses, using every method imaginable, from technical expertise to social engineering to disguise. When deployed on covert missions, Custodians can operate with a subtlety that belies their size and strength. They move through shadows with supernatural silence despite their massive frames. They eliminate targets without alerting nearby enemies. They extract information through interrogation techniques ranging from subtle psychological manipulation to direct violence. They can adopt disguises that allow them to move through imperial society unrecognized, their size and bearing explained away as genetic modification or military augmentation. But even in covert operations, custodians maintain the option for overwhelming force. If subtlety fails, if their presence is detected and stealth becomes impossible, they can shift instantly to direct assault. This flexibility, the ability to operate across the full spectrum of warfare from covert infiltration to frontal assault, makes them extraordinarily versatile and difficult to counter. Their tactical doctrine includes extensive use of what might be called psychological warfare, though not in the traditional sense of propaganda or intimidation. Rather, custodians use their reputation as a weapon. What the simple appearance of golden armor on a battlefield can cause enemy morale to collapse, can convince defenders that their position is untenable, can shift the psychological balance of an engagement before a single shot is fired. This psychological impact is not accidental. The custodians understand that their reputation has value, that being known as the Emperor's chosen warriors, who have never failed, in 10,000 years, creates expectations that can be weaponized. When facing enemies who know what custodians are capable of, the mere threat of their deployment can achieve strategic objectives without requiring actual combat. Conversely, when facing enemies who do not know or do not fear them, the shock of discovering they face custodians rather than conventional forces can create chaos in enemy ranks. Against specific enemy types, but custodians adapt their tactics accordingly. Fighting chaos forces, they maintain absolute mental discipline to resist corruption and temptation. They identify possessed individuals and demonic entities by subtle signs that others might miss, their training allowing them to spot the tells that mark chaos influence. They prioritize eliminating psykers and sorcerers who might employ warp-based attacks, using their mobility and firepower to reach these high-value targets before they can unleash devastating abilities. Against orcish forces, custodians exploit the greenskins' lack of tactical sophistication and their tendency toward individual combat rather than coordinated warfare. A custodian facing orcish forces uses superior positioning and firepower to thin enemy numbers at range. It then engages in close combat where their skill and equipment advantages are most pronounced. They target orcish leaders, understanding that killing the warboss or nobs will cause the rest of the force to lose cohesion and potentially flee or fall into infighting. Fighting Tyranids requires different tactics. These organisms operate with hive mind coordination. They do not break or lose morale, and they adapt quickly to threats. Custodians counter this by creating kill zones where Tyranid organisms are destroyed faster than they can adapt, by targeting synapse creatures that coordinate lesser organisms, and by using their mobility to avoid being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Their firepower and melee capabilities allow them to destroy Tyranid bioforms of any size, from small warrior organisms to massive carnifexes and even biotitans. Against the Necrons, with their ability to reassemble after being destroyed, and their advanced technology, custodians use overwhelming firepower to completely disintegrate enemy constructs rather than merely damaging them. They identify tomb complexes and control nodes, understanding that destroying these critical infrastructure elements can disable entire Necron forces, and they maintain constant mobility, refusing to allow Necrons to bring their most devastating weapons to bear or to surround custodian positions. The tactical flexibility that custodians display stems ultimately from their training and their mental capabilities. They can analyze battlefield conditions in real time, identify optimal responses, and execute complex maneuvers while under fire from multiple directions. They learn from every engagement, adapting their tactics based on observed enemy capabilities and weaknesses. And they share this knowledge among themselves, ensuring that lessons learned in one battle become doctrine that all custodians can employ. Their combat doctrine also emphasizes protection of Imperial assets and civilians when possible. Unlike some Imperial forces that treat civilian casualties as acceptable losses in pursuit of military objectives, Custodians attempt to minimize harm to innocent people when tactically feasible. This is not sentimentality, but recognition that they exist to protect humanity, not merely to destroy its enemies. A Custodian will position themselves between civilians and threats, will evacuate non-combatants from combat zones when time permits, will sometimes accept greater personal risk to avoid collateral damage. Whilst this protective instinct extends to their treatment of other Imperial forces, when Custodians fight alongside Space Marines or Imperial Guard, they often take the most dangerous positions themselves, using their superior capabilities to shield their allies from the worst enemy attacks. They provide covering fire during withdrawals, hold choke points that allow other units to reposition, and generally serve as force multipliers that enhance the effectiveness of conventional forces beyond what their numbers alone would suggest. All of these tactical approaches, all of this doctrine and training and accumulated experience serves a single purpose: to make the Custodians as effective as possible in fulfilling their sacred duty. They exist to protect the Emperor and to serve as his instruments in situations where only the absolute finest warriors will suffice. Every aspect of how they fight reflects this purpose, from their emphasis on individual excellence to their willingness to sacrifice themselves for humanity's survival. But even with all their capabilities, even with their remarkable equipment and training and genetic perfection, the Custodians remain a small force. Their numbers, though maintained at 10,000, are tiny compared to the millions of Space Marines or the billions of Imperial Guardsmen. This numerical limitation creates both challenges and opportunities, shaping how the Custodians are deployed and how they view their role in the Imperium's defense. Chapter 10,000: Numbers and Strategic Value. One of the most striking aspects of the Adeptus Custodes is their limited numbers. They are known as the 10,000, and this number has remained essentially constant since the time of the Horus Heresy, where Space Marine chapters number around 1,000 warriors, and there are approximately 1,000 chapters across the Imperium, giving the Astartes a total strength approaching 1 million warriors. The Custodians number only 10,000. Where the Imperial Guard deploys billions or even trillions of soldiers across countless regiments, the Custodians could all fit within a single large stadium. This numerical limitation is not accidental or the result of some catastrophic loss. It is deliberate. The Custodians were never intended to be a conventional military force, or were never meant to serve as frontline troops who would engage in extended campaigns across the galaxy. They were created to be bodyguards, protectors of the Emperor himself, and guardians of his most important secrets. For this role, 10,000 warriors of unmatched capability is sufficient, while millions of lesser warriors would be inadequate. The number 10,000 itself may have symbolic significance, though this is speculation. In ancient Terran history, particularly among the Persian Empire of antiquity, the Immortals were an elite force of precisely 10,000 warriors. These historical Immortals maintained their strength at exactly that number, replacing any casualty immediately to ensure the force never diminished. The Custodians follow a similar practice, and maintaining their strength at 10,000 through continuous recruitment and training, though their process of replacement takes decades due to the complexity of creating new Custodians. This maintenance of constant strength requires that every Custodian who falls in battle must eventually be replaced. Given the difficulty of creating new Custodians, the low survival rate of candidates, and the decades required for training, this represents a significant commitment of resources. The Gene Wrights, who oversee the transformation process, must constantly be working to produce new warriors, must always have candidates in various stages of development to ensure that losses can be made good before the total strength dips below the sacred number. The Custodians' casualty rate has varied dramatically throughout their history, as during the war in the Webway, they suffered catastrophic losses, going from 10,000 to roughly 1,000 over the course of weeks of brutal warfare. Rebuilding from such devastating casualties took centuries, requiring the creation of 9,000 new custodians through a process that could not be rushed without sacrificing quality. During more peaceful periods, casualties might be minimal, perhaps only a handful of custodians falling per century, allowing the order to maintain its strength with minimal recruitment. In the current era, with custodians deploying beyond Terra more frequently than at any time since the Great Crusade, casualties have increased. Every major engagement sees some custodians fall, yet their superior capabilities and equipment insufficient to guarantee survival against the most dangerous threats in the galaxy. Each loss is mourned, not just for the warrior who has fallen, but for the decades or centuries of training and experience that die with them, the accumulated knowledge and skill that cannot be easily replaced. The limited numbers of custodians create strategic limitations that affect how they can be deployed. They cannot garrison numerous worlds or maintain a constant presence across the Imperium. They cannot serve as frontline troops in extended campaigns, cannot absorb casualties the way Space Marine chapters or Imperial Guard regiments can. Every custodian deployed beyond Terra is one fewer guardian protecting the Imperial Palace, one fewer warrior standing between the Emperor and any threat that might emerge. Whilst this creates difficult decisions for the Captain General and other custodian leadership. When should custodians deploy beyond Terra? What threats warrant risking these irreplaceable warriors? How many custodians can be committed to external operations without compromising the defense of the Imperial Palace? These questions have no easy answers, and different Captain Generals throughout history have answered them differently based on their assessment of the threats facing the Imperium and the Emperor's needs. Under Trajan Valoris, the custodians have adopted a more aggressive deployment posture than at any time in recent millennia. Shield companies deploy across the galaxy, bringing their might to bear against critical threats. This represents a calculated risk. Is the judgment that the threats currently facing humanity are so severe that custodians must engage them proactively rather than waiting for dangers to reach Terra. It also reflects confidence that even with significant forces deployed externally, sufficient custodians remain on Terra to protect the Imperial Palace against any plausible threat. The strategic value of custodians far exceeds what their numbers would suggest. A single shield company, perhaps 50 to 100 custodians, can shift the balance of an entire campaign. Their presence on a battlefield provides both tangible military benefits and enormous psychological impact. Enemies who might stand firm against Space Marines or Imperial Guard often break when faced with custodians, recognizing that they face warriors against whom conventional tactics are inadequate. Moreover, their custodians deployed to a war zone often bring more than just their personal combat effectiveness. They carry authority that transcends normal military hierarchy, can requisition resources from other Imperial forces, can coordinate between different branches of the Imperial military that might otherwise struggle to work together effectively. A shield captain can command respect and obedience from Space Marine chapter masters, Imperial Guard generals, and even inquisitors, not through formal rank within those organizations, but through the sheer authority granted by their position as one of the Emperor's chosen. This authority allows custodians to serve as force multipliers beyond their direct combat contribution. They can identify and exploit weaknesses in enemy positions that conventional commanders might miss, as they can coordinate complex multi-force operations with a level of skill that few other officers possess. They can make strategic decisions with confidence, knowing that their judgment is backed by centuries of training and experience. A small number of custodians integrated into a larger Imperial force can dramatically increase that force's effectiveness through superior leadership and tactical coordination. The psychological impact of custodian deployment cannot be overstated. To loyalist Imperial forces, the appearance of golden armor represents hope, tangible proof that the Emperor has not abandoned them, that the finest warriors in the galaxy fight beside them. Morale soars when custodians join a battle. Soldiers fight with renewed determination, knowing that they stand alongside the Emperor's personal guardians. Conversely, To the Imperium's enemies, Custodians represent doom. Their presence signals that the Imperium is taking a threat seriously enough to deploy its most elite forces, that conventional victory has become unlikely, that survival itself is now in question. There are documented instances of enemy forces surrendering or retreating upon learning that Custodians had been deployed against them. These are not cowards, but experienced warriors who understand the reality of their situation, who recognize that fighting Custodians means accepting casualties far beyond what any reasonable military objective justifies. Even Chaos forces, who generally do not retreat or surrender, sometimes withdraw when faced with Custodian deployment. The traitor, Astartes, and their demon allies, calculating that their objectives can be better achieved by avoiding direct confrontation with the Golden Warriors. The limited numbers also mean that each individual Custodian is immensely valuable, not just in terms of their combat effectiveness, but also in terms of what they represent and what they know. A Custodian who has served for centuries or millennia possesses knowledge that might be found nowhere else in the Imperium. They have witnessed events that are now ancient history, have participated in campaigns that shape the galaxy, have spoken with individuals long dead. This accumulated experience and institutional memory is irreplaceable, and its loss when a veteran Custodian falls represents a tragedy that extends beyond the merely military. Because of this value, and because each Custodian is effectively unique and irreplaceable, they are deployed with careful consideration. The Captain General does not spend Custodian lives casually or wastefully. Every deployment is carefully analyzed, threats assessed, objectives clearly defined. Custodians are sent only where their unique capabilities are necessary, where lesser forces would be inadequate, where the strategic value of success justifies the risk to these irreplaceable warriors. This calculation means that some threats, even serious ones, do not warrant Custodian deployment if conventional Imperial forces can handle them. A world facing Orcish invasion might receive Space Marines or Imperial Guard, but not Custodians unless the situation is extraordinarily dire. As a Chaos cult uprising might be suppressed by local planetary defense forces and the Inquisition without requiring Golden Warriors to deploy, Custodians are the ultimate solution, deployed only when ultimate solutions are required. The numerical limitation also affects how Custodians view casualties among other Imperial forces. Where a Space Marine chapter master might accept the loss of several squads to achieve a critical objective, where an Imperial Guard general might sacrifice entire regiments in frontal assaults, Custodians cannot afford such attrition. This creates a different operational calculus, one that emphasizes precision and efficiency over simple weight of numbers. A Custodian force plans operations to minimize casualties, not just among themselves, but among any forces under their command or fighting alongside them, recognizing that every lost soldier weakens humanity's overall defensive capability. This efficiency-focused approach sometimes creates tension with other Imperial forces who are accustomed to accepting casualties as an inevitable cost of war. A Space Marine might see the Custodians' careful planning and risk-averse tactics as overcautious, while the Custodians view the Astartes' willingness to accept losses as wasteful. An Imperial Guard commander might become frustrated with Custodian reluctance to commit to frontal assaults, while the Custodians see such assaults as unnecessarily costly when more sophisticated approaches could achieve the same objectives with fewer casualties. But ultimately, the Custodians' approach is vindicated by their 10,000-year record of success. They have never failed in a mission when deployed in appropriate strength with clear objectives. They have protected the Emperor for 10 millennia without a single breach of the Imperial Palace's inner sanctum. They have maintained their strength despite catastrophic losses during the Webway War and the Siege of Terra. They have adapted to the changing threats facing the Imperium while maintaining their core capabilities and purpose. The maintenance of their numbers at exactly 10,000 serves another purpose beyond mere tradition. It represents a covenant between the Custodians and the Emperor, a promise that they will always be ready, always be at full strength when he needs them. Whether the Emperor, immobile upon the golden throne and barely conscious, is aware of this fidelity, is unknown. But the Custodians maintain their sacred number regardless, confident that should the Emperor awaken, should he rise from the throne and walk among his servants again, he will find 10,000 golden warriors ready to serve him, as they have since the earliest days of the Imperium. This brings us to the modern role of the Custodians, to how they have evolved in the current era while maintaining their core identity, and to what the future might hold for these immortal warriors as they face threats that perhaps even their remarkable capabilities struggle to overcome. Modern role and the future of the 10,000. The return of Reboot Guilliman marked a turning point not just for the Imperium, but specifically for the Adeptus Custodes. For 10,000 years, they had remained largely isolated on Terra, guarding the Imperial Palace while the wider galaxy burned. This isolation was not cowardice or neglect, but adherence to their primary duty, protecting the Emperor's physical form. With the Emperor unable to leave the Golden Throne, with his body seated upon that terrible device, and his psychic might focused on maintaining the webway seal, the Custodian's duty seemed clear. They would remain at his side, would guard him against all threats, would maintain their vigil until the stars themselves burned out. But Constantine Valdor's ancient decree, the Edict of Restraint that limited Custodian operations to the defense of the Imperial Palace, had been born from specific circumstances following the Horus heresy. It was a recognition that the Custodians had been reduced to a fraction of their strength during the Webway War and the Siege of Terra, that they needed time to rebuild, that the Emperor's defense could not be compromised while they recovered their numbers. Over the millennia, this temporary restriction hardened into tradition, into doctrine, into an identity as guardians who never left their post. Guilliman challenged this tradition. The Primarch, awakening to find an Imperium far darker than the one he had left, recognized that humanity faced existential threats on multiple fronts. The Great Rift had split the galaxy in two. Chaos incursions poured through weakened barriers between reality and the warp. The Necrons were awakening from their ancient sleep, and Tyrannid hive fleets descended upon Imperial space in numbers that suggested the main swarm had finally arrived. Orcish empires grew to threatening size. The Imperium, for all its vast military might, struggled to address these threats simultaneously. In this context, keeping the 10,000 finest warriors in the galaxy confined to Terra seemed wasteful. Yes, the Emperor's defense was paramount, but how many Custodians were actually required to guard him? How many warriors did it take to hold the Imperial Palace against any plausible assault? Certainly not 10,000. Perhaps a few thousand could maintain adequate security, leaving the rest available for deployment to critical battlefields across the galaxy. Trajan Valoris reached similar conclusions, as the Captain General recognized that the threats facing humanity required proactive response, that waiting for dangers to reach Terra meant allowing the Imperium to be weakened systematically. Better to deploy Custodian forces to eliminate threats before they grew too large, to support critical campaigns that might otherwise fail, to use the 10,000's remarkable capabilities where they could have maximum strategic impact. But this decision was not made lightly. Deploying Custodians beyond Terra meant accepting certain risks. Every warrior sent to distant battlefields was one fewer defender on the throne world. If a major threat emerged while significant Custodian forces were deployed externally, Terra's defenses would be correspondingly weakened. Moreover, casualties sustained in external operations would be deaths that might have been avoided had those warriors remained on Terra, protected behind the Imperial Palace's formidable defenses. Valoris calculated that these risks were acceptable, that the benefits of active deployment outweighed the potential costs. And so far, events have proven him correct. Shield companies of Custodians have deployed across the galaxy, participating in campaigns against Chaos incursions, Orcish invasions, Necron awakening, and Tyrannid hive fleets. Their presence has turned the tide of numerous conflicts, saved worlds that might otherwise have fallen, eliminated threats that could have grown to threaten the Imperium as a whole. The Custodians' relationship with other Imperial forces has necessarily evolved in this new era. For 10,000 years, they were legendary figures, warriors so far removed from normal imperial military operations that most soldiers never saw them. A common guardsman might spend their entire military career without encountering a custodian. Even space marines rarely interacted with the Golden Warriors, their paths crossing only during the most extraordinary circumstances. Now, custodians fight alongside space marines and Imperial Guard with increasing frequency. This brings both opportunities and challenges. On one hand, it allows the custodians to serve as force multipliers, their tactical expertise and combat prowess enhancing the effectiveness of conventional forces. On the other hand, it creates potential friction as warriors with vastly different training, doctrine, and capabilities attempt to coordinate on the battlefield. Most Space Marine chapter masters treat deployed custodians with appropriate respect, recognizing their authority and deferring to their judgment on strategic matters. But there are exceptions, particularly among younger or more prideful chapters who resent the implication that they need the custodian's help, or who bristle at taking direction from warriors who, for all their individual prowess, have little experience in sustained campaigning beyond Terra. Similarly, Imperial Guard commanders generally appreciate custodian support, but sometimes struggle to effectively integrate these elite warriors into their battle plans. Custodian tactical doctrine emphasizes mobility and precision strikes, rather than the grinding attritional warfare that characterizes many Imperial Guard campaigns. A Guard general accustomed to deploying hundreds of thousands of troops might find it difficult to wrap their mind around the idea that 50 custodians can accomplish what would normally require several regiments. The custodians, for their part, have had to adapt to fighting as part of larger military operations, rather than as isolated units pursuing specific objectives. They have learned to coordinate with Space Marines, whose combat style differs from theirs, to work with Imperial Guard forces who lack their mobility and protection, to function within command structures that do not always understand their capabilities or limitations. This adaptation has been relatively smooth, testament to the custodians' intelligence and training, but it represents a significant shift from their traditional isolation, as their expanded role has also brought the custodians into more frequent contact with other Imperial organizations, like the Inquisition, the Adeptus Mechanicus, and the Adeptus Ministorum. These interactions have been mixed. The Inquisition, accustomed to wielding tremendous authority throughout the Imperium, sometimes chafes at the custodian's refusal to be bound by inquisitorial authority. A custodian answers only to the Emperor and the Captain General, not to inquisitors regardless of their rank or the authority of their mandate. This has led to occasional conflicts, particularly when custodian operations interfere with inquisitorial investigations, or when the two organizations have different assessments of how a threat should be addressed. Generally, these conflicts are resolved through negotiation and compromise, both sides recognizing that they ultimately serve the same master. But the tension remains. The Inquisition's broad authority to investigate and act against threats to the Imperium, running up against the custodian's complete independence from all Imperial institutions except the throne itself. The Mechanicus views the custodians with a mixture of awe and frustration. The tech priests desperately desire access to custodian technology, to the forbidden weapons and advanced equipment that the Golden Warriors employ. But the custodians guard their secrets jealously, sharing nothing with Mars or any other Mechanicus institution. The Gene Rights who maintain the knowledge of custodian creation answer to no fabricator general, follow no tech priest doctrines, preserve secrets that predate the Mechanicus's founding. And this technological gap is a source of constant irritation for the Mechanicus, particularly for senior magi who believe that all human technology should ultimately fall under their purview. But the custodians remain adamant. Their weapons and armor are not for others to study or replicate. Their creation process must remain secret. Their capabilities must not be compromised through sharing knowledge that might fall into enemy hands. Looking toward the future, the role of the Adeptus Custodes seems likely to continue expanding. the threats facing humanity show no signs of diminishing. If anything, they grow more severe with each passing year. The Indomitus Crusade has stabilized some regions, but others face escalating dangers. The Great Rift continues to spew forth demonic incursions. New Tyrannid hive fleets arrive from beyond the galaxy. Yet the Necrons awaken in greater numbers, reclaiming tomb worlds that have slept for eons. Against these threats, the Custodians' capabilities are needed more than ever. Their ability to rapidly deploy to critical battlefields, to shift the balance of seemingly lost campaigns, to eliminate threats that conventional forces cannot handle, all of this suggests that external deployments will remain a key part of their operations for the foreseeable future. The days when Custodians never left Terra are almost certainly over, a historical curiosity that future generations will look back on as an anomaly in the Order's 10,000-year history. But this raises questions about sustainability. Can the Custodians maintain their strength while accepting the casualties that come with active campaigning? The creation process for new Custodians cannot be rushed, cannot be made more efficient without sacrificing quality. If casualties in external operations exceed the rate at which new warriors can be produced, the Order's strength will gradually diminish. This would create a crisis, forcing difficult decisions about whether to reduce external deployments to preserve strength or to accept declining numbers in exchange for maximum strategic impact. So far, this has not become a pressing concern. The Custodians have sustained casualties in their modern campaigns, certainly, but nothing approaching the catastrophic losses of the Webway War. Their superior capabilities, equipment, and tactical acumen allow them to accomplish missions with minimal losses in most cases. Even in their bloodiest engagements, yet they rarely lose more than a handful of warriors, losses that can be made good through the steady production of new Custodians. But there is always the possibility of another catastrophe, another conflict like the Webway War that inflicts crushing casualties. If the forces of chaos were to launch a major assault on Terra itself, if demonic legions poured through the Great Rift in numbers sufficient to threaten the throne world, the Custodians would be forced to stand and fight regardless of cost. Such a battle could easily result in casualties numbered in the thousands, losses that might take centuries to replace. The question of female Custodians deserves mention here. Recent law has clarified that the Custodians have always included both male and female warriors, though this was not always clear in earlier source material. The distinction is essentially meaningless. Male and female Custodians undergo the same transformation process, receive the same training, and possess the same capabilities. There is no difference in combat efficacy, no gendered specialization within the Order. All are simply Custodians, warriors who have been rebuilt at a cellular level to serve the Emperor. This clarification resolved some confusion in the law, but created discussion among fans about continuity and how this information fits with earlier sources that seemed to suggest Custodians were exclusively male. The official position is that female Custodians have always existed, but were perhaps less visible in the historical record, that the process of selecting infants from noble families has always included both sons and daughters. That gender simply does not matter when the entire body is being rebuilt at a molecular level. From a practical standpoint, this makes sense. The Emperor, when creating his Custodians, would have wanted the largest possible pool of candidates to select from. Limiting recruitment to only male infants would arbitrarily reduce the number of potential Custodians by half, decreasing the chances of finding suitable candidates. Given the difficulty of the transformation process and the high failure rate, maximizing the initial candidate pool would have been a priority. The modern Custodians face a galaxy that is perhaps more dangerous than at any time in the 10,000 years since the heresy, but they face it as they have always faced danger, with absolute confidence in their capabilities, with unwavering loyalty to the Emperor, whilst with tactical genius and physical might that makes them the finest warriors in the galaxy. They have adapted to their expanded role while maintaining their core identity. They have proven that they can fight effectively alongside other Imperial forces while retaining their independence and unique capabilities. And they stand ready, as they have always stood, to face any threat that might emerge. whether defending Terra against invasion, deploying to distant battlefields to eliminate critical threats, or simply maintaining their eternal vigil over the Emperor's physical form, the Custodians remain what they have always been. The Emperor's chosen, the finest warriors humanity has ever produced, the golden wall that stands between civilization and oblivion. Conclusion. So after this extensive journey through the history, capabilities, and operations of the Adeptus Custodes, we return to our original question. How strong are they? The answer, as we have seen, is that they are extraordinarily, almost incomprehensibly strong. They are warriors who operate in a category beyond even the Space Marines, who combine physical perfection with mental brilliance, who wield equipment that represents the pinnacle of human technological achievement. A single Custodian is worth dozens of normal soldiers, can face down threats that would require entire squads of Space Marines to combat. They can lift weights that would crush unenhanced humans, move with speed that makes them appear as golden blurs, survive injuries that would kill lesser warriors instantly. Their senses perceive the world in ways normal humans cannot comprehend, but their minds process information faster than any cogitator. Their training encompasses every form of warfare and extends into arts and sciences far removed from battle. They wear armor, crafted from auramite, a substance so rare and valuable that a single suit is worth more than entire planets. They wield weapons that incorporate forbidden technology from the dark age of technology. Weapons so potent that even the Mechanicus is forbidden from studying them. They have access to vehicles and equipment that use anti-gravity and teleportation, technologies that much of the Imperium has lost or never possessed. But their strength is not merely physical or technological. It is the strength of absolute dedication, of 10,000 years of unwavering service, of loyalty so perfect that not a single Custodian has ever turned traitor. Where it is the strength of warriors who were individually crafted by the Emperor himself, who carry his vision for humanity in their very genetics. It is the strength of an organization that has maintained its capabilities and purpose across 10 millennia of warfare, that has adapted to changing threats while remaining true to its core identity. The battles we have examined demonstrate this strength. The war in the Webway, where a few thousand Custodians held back infinite demonic hordes for weeks on end, despite being reduced to a mere fraction of their original strength. The Siege of Terra, where Custodians held critical positions against overwhelming numbers and never yielded. Modern campaigns where small numbers of Custodians shift the balance of entire wars, where their presence transforms hopeless situations into victories. Or we have met the legendary warriors who have led the Custodians through the ages. Constantine Valdor, the first and perhaps greatest of their number, whose martial prowess allowed him to duel Primarchs, and whose tactical genius shaped the early Imperium. Trajan Valoris, the current Captain General, who has led the Custodians out of their 10,000-year isolation and into active warfare across the galaxy. Countless others who have proven that even among these remarkable warriors, there are those who stand out as truly exceptional. We have examined their creation process, the cellular alchemy that transforms helpless infants into living weapons of unparalleled might. We have explored their training, decades or centuries of instruction that creates not just warriors, but philosophers, artists, strategists, and diplomats. We have detailed their equipment, the armor and weapons that enhance their already incredible capabilities to levels that border on the divine. And we have considered their role in the modern Imperium, how they have adapted to contemporary threats, while maintaining their primary duty to protect the Emperor. Their deployment beyond Terra represents both opportunity and risk, the chance to eliminate threats before they grow too large balanced against the danger of weakening Terra's defenses. So far, this gambit has proven successful, but the future remains uncertain. The Adeptus Custodes stand as proof that excellence is achievable, that through dedication and training, and an unwillingness to accept anything less than perfection, humans can ascend to heights that approach the divine. They represent the Emperor's vision for humanity made manifest, warriors who combine the best of human capability with technology and genetic enhancement to create something that transcends mere mortality. In the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war and the laughter of thirsting gods, the Custodians remain a beacon of hope. They prove that humanity can field warriors capable of standing against any threat, that loyalty and duty can endure across millennia, that the Emperor's vision has not died despite 10,000 years of darkness and war. As long as the 10,000 stand vigilant, as long as golden armor gleams on battlefields across the galaxy, humanity retains hope for survival, and perhaps, one day, for victory. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of the Adeptus Custodes. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of Warhammer 40,000's most fascinating factions, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. There is so much more to explore in this dark and fascinating universe, from the grim nobility of the Space Marines to the terrifying might of the Chaos Gods, from the ancient menace of the Necrons to the devouring hunger of the Tyranids. The galaxy of the 41st Millennium holds endless stories, and I look forward to sharing more of them with you. Until next time, remember, the Emperor protects, but the Custodians protect the Emperor. And as long as they stand their vigil, humanity endures.
I hope you guys enjoyed the story. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, share button, whatever you want. Give me some feedback if there's any. And yeah, sleep well.